shot, 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 shot. Everybody. Big, blustery, windy day today. Went and spent some time with a friend today. Played some D&D. That's right. I play Dungeons and Dragons. Get over it. Even worse, I'm the Dungeon Master. I prefer, like, the Game Runner. Like, what are we, 12? Like, we're not 12 anymore, right? Although, why not, right? Why not? What do I feel like playing? I feel like playing a tune. I picked up the guitar. I don't know why. Baby, baby, how was I supposed to know? Something wasn't right here, oh pretty baby, I shouldn't have let you go. Now you're out of sight and show me how you want it to be. Tell me, babe, I need to know now what we got. My loneliness is killing me. I must confess I still believe when I'm not with you I lose my mind. Give me a sign. Hit me baby one more time. Oh pretty baby, the reason I breathe is you. Girl, you got me flying. Oh baby, baby, there's nothing that I wouldn't do. It's not the way I planned it. Show me how you want it to be. Tell me, babe, I need to know now what we got. My loneliness is killing me. I must confess I still believe when I'm not with you I lose my mind. Give me a sign. Hit me baby one more time. My loneliness is killing me. I must confess I still believe when I'm not with you I lose my mind. Give me a sign. Hit me baby, hit me baby, hit me baby, hit me baby, hit me baby one more time. Yeah, fucking kick ass. Fucking kick ass. You know, like, that song, when you actually listen to the lyrics, it is like the song of our generation, right? Like and the song of the pandemic, right? My loneliness is killing me. I must confess I still believe. When I'm not with you, I lose my mind. Give me a sign. Hit me, baby, one more time. That's what this pandemic does, man. Hits us, baby, one more time, right? I hope you guys are doing well. Good to see you. Good to see you. Oh my goodness. Had a good day today. Spent some time with some friends. Played some D&D. Right? Just screwed around. It was nice. It was nice. It's nice to screw around. Ah yes, 10 to 5 days based on what Delta Airlines CEO, follow the science, my butt, yeah. All that CDC shit. I actually listened to, a lot of people have been recommending to me this fellow, I forget his name offhand, but he was on, I've got it actually right here, I think. Yeah, Dr. Robert Malone had a conversation with Joe Rogan, right? And I started listening to it. I think I didn't get that far into it, but like, the thing that's impressive about this guy is he is like the insider's insider. Like he's been using vaccines and doing vaccines and been on the cutting edge of vaccines for his entire life. And now he is the whistleblower, right? Like yesterday I was talking to somebody on the channel and being like, okay, where's the whistleblower? Here he is. Like, here he is on Joe Rogan's podcast, right? Like, this guy is blowing the whistle on the bullshit. Like, he's, let's be clear, he's not saying the vaccine doesn't work. He's not saying that it's not effective. But what he is saying is that alternative treatments and alternative ways to approach COVID have been actively suppressed. That's what he is saying. And honestly, given his pedigree and given who he is and given his position, I believe him. He's got no reason to come out and say the things that he's saying outside of the fact that it's true. And yeah, exactly. He invented mRNA tech and was working with HIV/AIDS with Fauci, right? He's a major whistleblower. He's a major whistleblower. And again, to be specific, right? He's not an anti-vaxxer. He's not saying that vaccines don't work, right? What he is saying is that alternative methods of treating this crisis are being suppressed by people for money. It really is that come down to that. Like, he's talking about like hydrochloroquine and ivermectin and other treatments and things like this, and pointing out very clearly, like, yeah, like a crate of this medicine costs like, $1, or vaccines that cost $1 million. What do you think? Like, how do you think it's going? So this guy, Dr. Robert Malone, is absolutely a major whistleblower in this story now. And the timing of him being on Joe Rogan was going to have him on, but then literally days before Rogan has him on the show, he gets banned off of Twitter. And why is he banned off Twitter? Because Twitter is working with the powerful in order to ensure that the money flows in the right direction. It's very simple, right? Very, very simple. So definitely, everybody who's been talking about this guy is right. And he's a major whistleblower in this story. And does unfortunately give ammunition to the anti-vaxxers. But, that's why you got to tell the truth. That's why you got to tell the truth. And so definitely worth the listen. I'm going to continue listening. As you can see, I've only listened to the first half of this, so 45 minutes of it. But definitely. Yep. We're going to get into Kazakhstan for sure, dude. We're going to get to Kazakhstan for sure. Yet President of Kazakhstan, Kasim Shwarmart Takaju just dismissed the former president, Nursultan Nazarbayev, who was the chairman of the Security Council of Kazakhstan and chaired the position himself. Yeah, and I don't know much about what's going on in Kazakhstan. But I know enough. We'll be talking about that for sure. What the heck? Let's get into the number draw, right? Today's number. Let's do it straight away. Yesterday I waited until like 7:30. Oh, way too late. I'm going with a 3. Feeling like a 3.
Here we go for today's number.
Here we go,
it's number. January 5, 2022. 10 balls.
Got a 2.
Each ball has a number. Numbers 1 through 10.
God bless David Lynch for doing this.
Swirl the numbers.
Swirl the numbers. Good to see Eziel, Nova Scotia, Ruth.
Pick a number.
Here we go. What did I say? Did I say 3? 3. Fine.
Today's number is...
Here we go.
4.
Vince. It's all you, baby. Vince with the 4. Boop, boop, boop. Oh, and Nova Scotia, you too. 2 of us with a 4. Fantastic. Do, 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 do. You win. Let's see what we get. Okay. What does that mean? That means 14. That's going to be... Nah. Oh, how about that? Haven't played this one in a little while. This is nice. This is nice. And you know what? My birthday's tomorrow, so this is somewhat fitting. I think about my family around my birthday, so... times they are uncertain, of that there is no doubt, and nobody can tell me quite what it's all about. The heartbreak and the loneliness, the chaos and the fear will make even the strongest cry, I wish my ma was here. A young man on a battlefield fights for a rich man's goal. The bullet cracks into his spine, he knows he won't grow old. And as the tears come streaming down, at once his mind goes clear. The war was fought for nothing, he cries, I wish my ma was here. A lively story well in hand, a joke to soothe your soul. And when it came to arguing, she'd forgive and let it go. And when I cried, she held me, told me it's okay, my dear. And as we face these darkened days, I wish my ma was here. And as we march into the streets, as all the righteous do, we'll raise our voices to the sky, they cannot stop the truth. And as we tear their structures down, we'll raise our victory cheer. We made the world a better place, and I wish my ma was here. Yeah, we made the world a better place, and I wish my ma was here. That song's like ever so slightly too high for me. I need to transpose that one down just a hair's breadth, just a couple of notes. But still, I love that song. I love that song. It makes me think about my mom. Happy early birthday. Thank you so much. That's so nice. That's so nice. I know I'm turning 39, right? Oh my God. It's like 1 year away from 40. Okay, that's okay. I've got a year to prepare for 40. I keep when I was like 37, I was like, this isn't so bad, you know? Turning 40, that'll be fine. And now I'm like closer to 40 and I'm like, oh, turning 40. For fuck's sake. Ugh. I just never thought I'd get here, you know? I just never thought it would actually happen. It's not so bad, exactly. And you know, if you seem to be doing well with it, right? I figure, right? Handling with grace and dignity. Ugh. Since the CDC says a 10-day lockdown would tank the economy, it stands to reason that if U.S. labor went on general strike for 9 days, we could demand anything we wanted. Yeah, I should say so, right? Yeah, 50 is usually when it hits you. Honestly, 30 sucked. Turning 30 was the worst. I hated turning 30, right? Turning 40, that'll be a cakewalk compared to 30. I miss Betty White. Yeah, don't we all? God bless her. So, Kazakhstan, right? Kazakhstan protests turn deadly as crowds storm, torch public buildings. Got a great video here of how serious we're talking here. Like, shit's getting real in Kazakhstan, man. what we are seeing across the globe is a rebellion of the proletariat. It is that simple. It's a proletariat rebellion across the board. Every country is having some kind of upsurge and some kind of uprising, right? That the holdouts are the imperial core, which is the United States, Canada, and Australia, right? That the allies of the imperial core, which are the European nations, seem to be quelling these sorts of upswells and these sorts of rebellions through actual social policy change. They're accepting the reality of imperialism and saying we don't want to go down that road again. We personally experienced what it is to become imperial, what it is to become these sorts of nations, and we're not interested. And so it seems as though they're trying to do everything they can to quell these upswells by actually improving the quality of life of their citizenry, right? And a place like Kazakhstan, you can look at the history of Kazakhstan, right? Like it's no mystery. It's the same story as most of the post-Soviet nations, right? Like here's Kazakhstan, used to be part of the Soviet Union, very much along the same lines as the Eastern Bloc, right? And all of this. Throughout the late 80s and early 90s, they go through an independence movement. The Soviet Union breaks apart, right? And what happens to all of these places, right? Well, not all of them. A place like Belarus, for example, maintains the kind of core communist principles. But neoliberal capitalism moves in, right? It's very straightforward, right? Neoliberal capitalism moves in, starts the project of wealth extraction, and the result is this. This is the result, right? Like, this is the result every single time. And you are seeing a rebellion of the proletariat, very, very straightforwardly. You're seeing people who want a return to some kind of stability, who want a return to, and I believe that Kazakhstan is one of the, I might be misciting this, but I think this is accurate. Kazakhstan is one of the places that polls that they want to go back to the Soviet Union, to communism, right? You see that in places like Hungary, Romania, Serbia, Bulgaria, right? All of the former Eastern Bloc, or the Eastern Bloc rather. Like, whenever you poll these guys, they're like, yeah, things are better under the Soviet Union, under communism. Like, we would like to go back. We've had a taste of communism. We've had a taste of capitalism. We'd like to go back to communism, right? And that's usually the case. I think the exceptions are like Poland, for example, right? Which that makes a good amount of sense considering the history of Poland and how it was torn apart. It's a miracle that Poland even exists as a nation, honestly. So my heart goes out to the Kazakhstan people, just like it goes out to everybody who's been a victim of neoliberal capitalism, and hopefully it shakes out for them. Hopefully it shakes out for them. Yeah, it looks like Ecuador, Colombia, and Chile last year. Yeah, exactly, right? Like, this is what you have to do in order to get rid of these neoliberal capitalists, right? Like, you've got to surround the halls of power, and they're not going to go silently. Like, this is coming to Canada and the United States. Like, this is what it's going to look like within this decade. Absolutely. Like, we're not going to just like the populace isn't just going to quietly fade into this victimization, we literally have vampires sucking out our blood, right? Like, that's what's going to happen. Yeah, and of course, it seems like the NED has funded groups in Kazakhstan. Yeah, always worth pointing out. You're absolutely right, Major. Absolutely right. Always worth pointing out the Belt and Road Initiative, right? Like, here's Kazakhstan, right? Belt and Road Initiative goes right through Kazakhstan, right? Major sections go through Kazakhstan. They want to do everything they can to disrupt the Belt and Road Initiative. Now, I don't think that this is, like, that's definitely a narrative that's within this, but I think in this particular case, you're looking at a true popular uprising, right? Because because of the links that go through Mongolia and even the links that go through Russia over here, right? A disruption through Kazakhstan over here isn't that problematic for the Chinese and for the Belt and Road Initiative in this regard, right? Like, you really, really want to go after Belarus and this connection here. You really want to be going after Poland and Belarus in order to do that and disrupt things here in Turkey, Iran, right? Those are your weak points in regards to getting into Europe. But definitely worth pointing out. That definitely plays. It's really sad to see what's going on in Kazakhstan. The government is very right-wing and pretty authoritarian. Yeah, every government is very right-wing and pretty authoritarian right now, right? Like, that's neoliberal capitalism. Like, neoliberal capitalism only pretends to be progressive and only pretends to have progressive elements. Like, and as long as you keep voting for it while they do nothing for you, then they'll happily be like that, right? Like, yeah, they're not socialists. No, of course. No, I mean, again, like, like, we're ruled by psychopaths. It's no different in Kazakhstan. Like, they want money for themselves. It's very straightforward. And the principles of wealth extraction that exist here exist there as well, right? It's not much different. And, like, we're not going to avoid this, right? Like, this kind of stuff. And this is really one of the narratives that keeps coming out is, like, people keep pretending as though, like, oh, that's over there, right? Oh, Kazakhstan, right? Like, this is gonna be Canada and the United States this decade. Like, sooner than you like, sooner than you think, right? The populace is being abandoned. We're in a complete and total strategy of abandonment. The strategy is abandonment. Like, it isn't even to, like, pretend as though we're not abandoning you. Like, it's straight up just like like the CDC decision to cut to cut sick days from 10 to 5. It's a strategy and a policy of abandonment. That's what it is. Because, again, we worship money, and if you're not making money for psychopathic billionaires, then you're not worth anything in this society. And what's the result? This is your result. This is the result. I hope Chile goes more left. We'll see. Boris comes off as very Warren-esque. Yeah. Poland, very right-wing, theocratic. Yeah. No. Poland is very right-wing. And I think that's a cultural thing more than anything. Anytime I tune into Poland, like, even the people who are kind of on the left, right, who are like, hey, maybe we should care about the citizens, they themselves are very conservative-minded. So the ex-president was leader for almost 30 years. Yeah. Well, but that's very, like, common in, like, this idea that, like, we here in the West are very used to, like, changing leadership every, like, 4 or 8 years, right? Like, we're really, really used to that. And we've normalized it, and it's like the rest of the world does not operate that way. Like, that's a very Western phenomenon, and an extremely recent one at that. Like, and as recent as, like, 150 years ago. Like, most countries and most nations are used to the idea that, like, that's our leader. They've been there forever, right? That's who they are, right? And you're not gonna, like, oust them or change them or do any of that kind of stuff. Like, most people are used to the idea that that's your leader and that's going to be your leader for the rest of your fucking life. That, like, if there is going to be a shift or a change in leadership, it might happen once in your lifetime, right? Like, this concept that we have here in the West where it's like, oh, we'll have this guy, and then we'll have this guy, and then we'll have this guy, and then we'll have this guy. Like, that's just the entire rest of the world does not think that way. Can we vote out capitalism? No. Just how you can't vote out a parasite, right? Like, if you have a parasite in your gut, you're not going to vote it out. The left party seems pretty progressive. We'll see. Yeah, who knows? The daily COVID cases in India doubled in 5 days. Well, that's the plan, right? Like, that's the idea. Omicron doubles. Omicron does its job as a vaccine, COVID becomes an official flu. Then again, Pfizer and Moderna pushing for more vax until 2024. Yeah, of course. Like, COVID is going to become like the flu. It is going to be like a new flu that exists in our society. It can't not at this point. Like, there's no way we're going to get it out of our society anymore. Now the concern is just like, how deadly can this thing get, right? That's the big concern. Like, if I was the people who was responsible for like keeping my eyes on COVID, I would always be like, yeah, this thing could like take a fucking crazy turn. Like, it went from being like really think about it. Like, the jump in terms of transmission between Delta and Omicron was a factor of 6, right? Like, that's a substantial jump, right? Like, that's not a minute incremental kind of a shift. That's literally like, and not only did it jump in terms of its transmissibility by a factor of 6, the transmissibility completely sidestepped the vaccines, right? So you have this like column that we all just sort of accept and say of Omicron that like, oh yeah, transmissibility, it went up by a factor of 6, yabba, yabba, yabba. Well, what if that was deadliness? What if it went up by a factor of 6 in how easy it could kill you? And what if it sidestepped the vaccine in terms of how easily it killed you? And we're just letting this into the populace? Like, when does COVID transmit? Like, when does it mutate, rather? Like, COVID mutates when it transmits. Like, if COVID was sentient, and I'm not saying it is, but if it was, right, this would be my strategy. I would just absolutely be like, oh, look at them. They made a vaccine. Isn't that fun? Well, I'll just sidestep that vaccine in terms of transmissibility so that I can mutate as fast as possible and as often as possible. And I'll spit something deadly out, right? Like, we're playing with fire. We're playing with fire. And we're going to get burned. For sure, we're going to get burned. Like, there's just no way, in my view, that the narrative in regards to COVID is like, oh, Omicron went through, and then the cases went down, and then everything's normal, and then it fades away, right? Like, it's just not going to happen that way. Like, that's kind of boring, honestly. Like, we're going to get a real strain. Like, we're going to get something real serious. And then we're going to see the real, like, I have been saying throughout this entire COVID period that we are seeing the psychos. Like, these people are psychopathic. Like, you got to be dumb to not see this at this point. But we're really gonna see, like, when this thing takes a turn, when the deadliness of this thing kicks up, which in my view is like almost an inevitability. I don't know how it can't not do that, right? When this thing kicks up, we're going to see the psychos really come out to play. Like, these guys are going to go real nightmarish. It's going to be pretty crazy to see. Like, if you're not convinced of them being psychopaths yet, you will be. You fucking will be. Right? Like, how do we get out of this without COVID doing some kind of crazy mutation into deadliness? Like, I feel like we dodged a bullet with Omicron already. Yeah, and that's a whole other thing. Pissed off, bud. Who knows what pathogens are being released as the Arctic and permafrost melts? Yeah, that's a whole other can of worms, dude. That's a whole other can of worms. Still looking forward to something finally changing in this stupid country. Yeah, even in the U.S. Yeah. Good luck. It's going to take like a mass, and the rebellion is coming, man. Like, it is. Like, people are getting fucking mad about it. Like, I'm seeing more and more. Like, I'm seeing more and more of this kind of stuff, right? Like, people. I'm seeing it. Like this example. Since the CDC says a 10-day long lockdown will tank the economy, it stands to reason. If U.S. labor went on general strike, it could get anything they wanted. But I'm also seeing like attempts to. Come on, I had it right in front of my face. It was like on my fingertips. But I'm seeing more and more attempts to actually get something like this moving, right? Something, some kind of organization, some kind of people coming together, something to actually Oh, come on, come on. I fucking had it right in front of my face. Here we go. This is it. This is it. People have had enough. The May Day strike is a strike being held on the 1st of May, lasting 2 weeks, attempting to achieve global efforts by encouraging thousands, right? Now, this isn't to say that this is going to actually happen, right? But more and more and more, I'm seeing like genuine attempts to actually get this thing going, to actually say like we've got to begin this process. And I mean, it's a manifestation of the idea that I've been talking about the whole time. We have to surround the halls of power. Like, I am of the opinion that these guys are so psychopathic and so beyond, like, you can't negotiate with them, that a strike's not going to do it. Like, a strike isn't going to be enough. That they will just try to starve you out, right? You've got to go to their houses and workplaces and surround them. Like, you've got to. Nothing else is going to work, right? And unless we actually start doing it in serious and significant ways, this things are going to get worse, much worse than this, much worse. And like, we've got to grind this thing down. And my only concern, of course, is that I'm seeing lots and lots of people still continuing to frame this in terms of a negotiation. That like we'll get concessions from them. No, we should take the means of production away from them and chase them out of the conversation into prison cells for many of them. Like, these people are criminals, especially the people who have been spreading disinformation campaigns actively about like climate change into the society. Like, those people should go to jail at least, right? That should be considered a bare minimum, right? And unless that shit's actually happening, I don't really take anything. Yeah, cannot negotiate with sociopaths. Like, stop negotiating with these people, right? The goal of a movement should be to remove them from the conversation. Stop negotiating with them as if they should maintain their positions of power, right? Like, we should be seizing power. We should be redrawing our constitution. We should be changing our society, and we should be eliminating these psychopaths. Like, they should be gone. We shouldn't hear about them. We shouldn't care about them. We shouldn't know anything about them. They shouldn't have any power. They shouldn't have any wealth. They literally should not be able to make a decision, and when they stand up and speak, we should ignore them. No one should care what they think. Like, that's where we're at. And this idea that we should negotiate with these guys? Like, what? No. Like, no. Why? Can anyone give me a single reason why we should negotiate with these people? Like, they not only have they failed at literally everything they've attempted to do, they are happily destroying the entire species. Like, why are we negotiating with them? Take their power away. Permanently. Forever. Chase them out of the conversation. I've seen talk on TikTok about a trucker strike mid-January. Yeah, we'll see. Seems like Andrea is getting more airtime in our Ontario and our NDP more than ever before. People are really worried for the June election. I'm certain it will be a PC minority. I don't know. We'll see. Honestly, the electorate is so fickle. Like, I know that last federal election, it didn't really, like, indicate that. Like, everybody kind of just dug in. But, like, historically, Canadians are extremely fickle. Like, we really, really do only pay attention during election season, right? Like, that's why, like, the polls have shifted around for the NDP and the Liberals this last year and this last little bit. Doug Ford's poll numbers have dropped and all that kind of stuff. None of that really actually matters that much. Like, really. Like, Canadians are fickle. Even in the federal election where, like, the end result was, like, kind of the same. But remember how the Conservatives went up and then came back down, and the NDP surged and then came back down? Like, Canadians are fickle. Fickle. Like, they'll change their minds. Like, each party can sort of guarantee about 20% support Like 20-25% support is like, I'm a liberal and I vote liberal and I'll vote liberal until I liberal and liberal, right? And the same with conservative, same with NDP. But everybody else is just like, well, maybe, and then, well, but they said, and then, you know what? And then they, like, literally, that's what's going on. And it's that group of sort of shifting, undecided people who are actually the kingmakers in the conversation, right? So, and it's sort of weird to me that nobody ever stands up and says, maybe we should offer them something. Canada's top CEOs saw an average pay increase of almost 100K. Yeah. Well, and like the fact that these corporations and the wealthy are making money hand over fist really shows you like, oh, like the whole inflation narrative is bullshit, right? It is bullshit. It's not inflation. It's price gouging. That's what's happening. The economy isn't inflating. These guys are raising their prices because they know that you have to pay, right? They know you have to pay. And if their own personal finances were even stagnating, then I would start to believe the narrative of inflation. Then I would be like, oh yeah, okay, inflation. But that's not what's happening, right? It's not what's happening. So it's total bullshit. It's an obvious grift, right? And like, the entire media system is culpable at this point, right? Like, there isn't a single media outlet that exists outside of independent people like myself who are even interested. Like, they literally are just parroting what's being told to them by billionaires. Like, that's what the society is now, if you want to call it a society. Have you read any articles on the site Canadian Dimension? Yeah, Canadian Dimension is great. Canadian Dimension is great. They do good work. I read their stuff on here every so often. I think his vaccine and mask policies are cutting away at his base. Oh yeah. Supermarkets struggle amid worker shortage, even though they're making record level profits. Yeah, like there is no worker shortage. Like the narrative of a worker shortage is a joke. It's a total fucking faff, right? Like they could fill those slots if they wanted to. The reality is that they don't want to. Why would they care? They're just going to burn out the staff. If they can achieve the same goal with half the staff level just by burning their staff out and then claiming to the consumer base, oh, sorry about the decline in service, but, labor shortage. And the consumer base goes, oh, yeah, okay. Instead of going like, no, fuck you, hire people. Fuck you. I'm going to stop buying your shit. But here's the hard reality of everything, right? These guys are monopolists. We have to buy their shit. Like, we have to. We can't not, right? So they can jack the prices, burn out their worker base, right? They're psychos. They're psychos. And we have to accept it, right? Because we need food. We can't not buy food, right? And they own all of the means of production. They own the productivity. They own all of it. But it's a monopoly, right? An out-of-control Russian rocket stage has re-entered the Earth's atmosphere, according to the latest estimate from U.S. Space Command, which has been tracking its descent. I hope it's large enough. An out-of-control Russian rocket stage has re-entered the Earth's... At this point, man, if a fucking out-of-control rocket hit the city or something, at least be something to fucking talk about. Outside of just like, stop shooting stuff into space. Like, come on. Like, you're telling me that we're spending resources to get into fucking space and people can't, get food? Like, are you serious? I love this. Western civilizational logic is basically to fight with every nation on Earth but desire peaceful coexistence with a virus. Yeah. Like... if we're gonna espouse if we're going to espouse an ideology of a death cult, we might as well have an aura of plague around us, right? The plague aura is nothing new, by the way. What was the thing that decimated the Aztecs and the First Nations people? It was a plague that we brought with us, right? Because Westerners carry plague. We're a disease-ridden people. We're unhealthy, gross, disgusting people. Like, we live we live out of balance with the rest of the world, and so it creates plague, and we build up an immunity and a tolerance to it. But wherever we go, we spread it. We spread the pestilence with the war and the famine and everything else that we do, right? That's who we are. It's what we are. It's what we do. Like, we're not a peaceful people. Like, we're not interested in that. We've never been interested in that. There isn't a moment in Western history where we have ever been interested in peaceful coexistence. It's just not part of our ethos, right? Like, we try so hard to go to war. We want to go to war. We love going to war. It's built into us. Like, it's built into Western culture. We demand it. Like, we'll take a book like the Bible and use the Bible to justify and create like a just war theory, which then of course we use to just like, oh yeah, like just war theory. Then that means that we can just invade people, steal their resources, right? Yeah, sure, okay, right? That's who we are. And I do get to a point more and more where I'm like, I don't think we can't not be that. I think that that's what we are. Like, we're just always going to be that way until we finally blow ourselves up. Like, that seems to be the only way Westerners actually realize that what we're doing is actually quite damaging, right? Like, it's not enough to blow everybody else up. You got to blow yourself up. Hey, Barnabas, how you doing, bud? Good to see you. And it's just, I don't know. We're very short-sighted, gullible people. Seems to be the way of it. Seems to be the way of it. Yeah. Google will pay top execs $1 million each after declining to boost workers' pay. Like, there does come a point where you really do start to realize that, like, it isn't being done. These things aren't being done because they make sense. Right? These things are being done to maintain an ideological system and an ideological structure. Right? Like, the name of the show is Capitalism is a Death Cult. And I continuously have conversations with people who are like, that's so hyperbolic, right? You're just doing that for clickbait. Like, no. Like, I really am not. Like, I really, really am not. Like, we live in a death cult. And you can see it. Like, you can see it. It's really obvious in many, many ways. And stuff like this, why wouldn't they take that $1 million and just boost workers' pay? Right? Like, for real, like, why wouldn't they do that? Why would they give people who are already making millions of dollars, why would they give them more? Right? Especially for, like, not boosting the workers' pay. And it's because there's an ideology that says that workers are lazy and stupid and of a different class, right? And like Jeff Bezos is very explicit about this. Like, he outright says constantly that his workers are lazy, right? Constantly. And we just like accept that. And this ideology that says like CEOs and capitalists are somehow worth something, contrary to all of the evidence and observable fact, like it blows me away when people actually say that like being a CEO is a difficult job. I'm like, what the fuck? No, it's not. Like, it is not a difficult job to be a CEO of a company. If you're paid so much, right? And literally all you do is just like go around and be a mascot. And when you're actually confronted with needing to actually do work, you can just pay someone else to do it. Like, that's your job. Your entire job is just finding someone else to do your work for you. That's what being a CEO actually is, right? And the only work, if you want to call it work, but the only job that a CEO actually has is to ensure that the decisions made by the shareholders are enacted. That's it. That when the shareholders say lay these people off or lower their wages here or gut them here, cut them here, bust this union, you make sure that that's what happens, right? That's their job, right? And it's not difficult to do. You turn around and you hire the people you need to have them actually do the work for you. And then you go sit in your office or whatever. And you end up just being like the face of the company. You're a mascot, right? And that's not just a theory, by the way, right? People have studied this. Like, there have been studies of like, what do CEOs actually do for the company? How productive are CEOs? Like, what do they actually do? And the answer is fuck all. Like, fucking nothing. They do nothing. That if the CEO of every company suddenly just disappeared, no one would notice or care. Like, no one would notice or care. They're worthless. They don't do work, right? They're the definition of a worthless, like, go-between. And yet, and the reason why they need to be paid so much is just to maintain the system on behalf of the shareholder class. That's it. Like, that's it. I say the real job of a CEO is to make sure policy makes as much money as possible. I mean, yeah. But, like, that's not a job, right? Like, it's not a job. Do you see the video about the Sunwing Party plane on December 30th where the people were not wearing masks, dancing, and causing problems for hosts and pilots? Yeah, I mean, people being people. People being people. More accurate to say that our government is doing in our name. There really isn't a we. Us commoners are just spectators. I mean, but we're not spectators, right? Like, we're not. If we give our consent through our silence. Like, that's what it is. Like, if the government goes and does stuff in our name and we just remain silent about it and don't surround the halls of power and don't go on strikes about it, then we consent. Like, that's the truth. Like, I don't buy into this idea that, like, every government is a reflection of its people. Right? Every government. If it's a totalitarian, like, terrorist state, or if it's an egalitarian democracy, it's a reflection of its own people. That if the people don't want it to be that way, they can stop participating in it. Like, and we can. What's stopping us? Like, what's stopping us? The only thing that's stopping us right now is fear, right? Well, I got to work this job because I need food and shelter. Right? But now they're not even giving that. So, like, we really are in this sort of Marxian position where the only, like, the only thing we have nothing to lose but our chains, right? Like, we really are getting into that position. And when they go and, like, you know, commit a genocide against the Palestinians, or they go bomb Somalia, or they go bomb Syria, or they go do, like, we don't do anything about it. We don't actually care, right? And I mean, especially Americans. Like, Americans are, like, the majority of Americans think that when we do those things, we're doing good. That's always the justification. And that's true if you're a Democrat or Republican, right? Yeah, we bombed Syria, and there must have been a good reason for that, right? Because we're the good guys, right? Joshua Fluke, YouTuber, covers behind the scenes of tech industry, shows the true colors of death cult on how they exploit programmers, engineers. Yeah. The system is exploitive, right? Like, it has to be, or else it would cease to exist. Yet CEO equals business monarchy. You see Musk's most recent excuse for no taxes. All these amounts, it's no longer funds for personal use, it's funds for capital allocation. Capital should be in the hands of skilled allocators. Oh my God. It's just like another, like, it's pretending as though capitalists are like gods, right? Like, it's creating like how was it in the Roman Republic that the emperor was seen as a, like, demigod figure, right? And like the British monarchy, right? Like, The kings and queens of the British monarchy literally argued that they were put in place by God himself, right? That there was like divine right, right? It's not different. Like, so they're just admitting their religious ideology, right? They're just admitting that it's the same as like God put me here, right? Yeah, I'm a skilled allocator. Yeah, it certainly has nothing to do with the fact that I was given billions of dollars by my slaver of a father. Like, Jesus Christ. Notice how the definition of skill there is profit accumulation rather than improvement of human well-being. Exactly. George Floyd's niece just got shot. Like, these people, man. Like, leave these fucking people alone. 4-year-old niece. Are you serious? Someone shot at her home. Like, these white supremacists, man. Like, this shit is real. Just people driving by, shooting at George Floyd's house. How dare you get killed by a cop? And then, what? Like, what's the logic here? Brutal. Willing spectators then, but the decision of nation states are made by a tiny number of people, and people are propagandized into identifying with those decisions when they had nothing to do with it. Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, there is like a gray area to it, right? And there certainly are more culpable people. Like, there certainly are people who are more culpable than others, for sure. But like, I genuinely do think that what we are faced up with is not a political crisis, but a cultural crisis. That the reason why we buy into the lies and the propaganda so easily is because we want to believe them, right? Like, we want to believe those lies. We want to believe that those nations are just as bad as we are. We want to believe it. And it's a cultural problem that we are having currently, and we're not actually like genuinely facing it as a people. And there's this real desire for people to put the blame exclusively on the leader. Like, just yesterday I was talking about this. People really want to act as though like Doug Ford here in Ontario, as an example, right? That like Doug Ford's a psycho, right? And people really want to be like, oh, if only the people who vote for Doug Ford snap out of it or see the truth or any of this kind of stuff. And it's like, no. The people who are voting for Doug Ford agree with him, right? Everything that comes out of his mouth and his worldview and the way that he thinks, the people who are voting for him agree. Is it an organic cultural problem or manufactured? I don't necessarily see a difference. I like it's both, if you understand me, right? Like, we could very easily just be skeptical, right? Like, just do this. Probably not, brah. Probably not, right? Like, anytime our corporate media stands up, anytime anybody stands up, we could begin with the position of skepticism, but we don't. And there's a reason why we don't, right? And it really is like your classic like like, we would rather go along with lies being told to us by our own people than believe truths that support other people's nations. You understand what I mean by that? Like, at least the guys that are lying to me are also white. Right? To really put a pin in it. Like, I would rather go along with a lying white person than a brown person telling me the truth. Like, that's a really like clumsy way of phrasing it, I think, but it's more or less the position that we're at. Where like, people don't want to think about it. They don't want to open their minds to anything. They don't want to face reality, right? They just want to they don't want to confront like the dark past of Western civilization, right? It's recent past that is extreme. Like, this is why, like, the quote-unquote intellectuals on the right are, like, they exist in fantasy. And when they get together, they talk about just, like, the most worthless shit, right? Have you ever actually watched the conversations between, like, Peterson and Shapiro? Have you ever watched these conversations that they have with one another, like that the Daily Beast people actually have with one another? It's the most diluted shit ever. Because they don't live in reality, right? These guys were, like, born as millionaires. They've never actually worked a job, right? They don't know what's happening in the world, and they don't even understand the basic structure of their society, right? Everybody's just like, get a job, right? But they don't have jobs. Like, they think that they work really hard, but they're the most worthless people in the society, right? Like, if these guys disappeared, no one would notice or care. Nothing would change, right? Nothing would change. But we're all just, like, going along with it as these guys, like, have philosophical discussions about the nature of reality that they know nothing about. Like, it's gotten, like, fucking embarrassing to watch. And, like, and so, you know, like, sure, it's manufactured to a degree. Like, powerful people would like to maintain power. But there's also an element of, like, we want the powerful people to have that power because then it means they have to make the decisions. That's the way that we think, right? Like, we don't want to actually have to make these decisions for ourselves. And we're definitely not going to actually, like, we barely tolerate racial groups within our own society. Like, what? You think we're going to suddenly tolerate or be interested in the well-being of other nations? No. Yeah, modern propaganda techniques are extremely sophisticated and deliberately play on the weaknesses of human psychology and can be individually targeted. How can democracy exist in those conditions? Yeah. Like, I mean, this is kind of what I talk about. It's like, like, I have a good amount of sympathy for the boomers because they were really the first ones to get hit with television propaganda, right? Like, really, really smacked with it. And they had no method of being skeptical the way, like, for God's sakes, these guys banned a plant while smoking another plant. Like, it's pretty obvious that these guys were, like, their brains got rotted and they couldn't have not been rotted. Like, it's just what happened to them. And so I'm pretty sympathetic of them on that line. But at the same time, like, a part of the reason why the propaganda works is because it plays into already existent biases, right? Like, this is why anti-Chinese propaganda is so effective. Where you can have people who, like, straight out, I ask people all the time. It's become, like, daily almost. I straight up say, like, how much do you trust your media? And I've never had anybody go higher than 5, right? Everybody gives the media a failing grade. Everybody. Except when it comes to China. When it comes to China, it's 100%, like 1,000%. Like, if the media says anything about China, they instantly believe it. Why? Because the xenophobia is built into your consciousness already. And so you don't need to tell a very convincing lie, right? People will go along with it because they want to, right? Because the xenophobia is already built in. Like, propaganda can't be effective if you're skeptical, right? It literally can't. This is the reason why I don't fall for this shit anymore, because I assume these guys are lying, like, about everything, about literally everything. Like, I'm to a point now where, like, there are things that I assumed were true because the lie was so huge and so pervasive that I thought there has to be at least some truth to what they're saying here. This has to be based on something, right? And when I've looked into it, it's been like, oh no, like, the whole story. I'll give you a very clear example of something that happened really, really recently, right? So I did a big investigation on the Holodomor, right? The famines that everybody brings up when they talk about the Soviet Union, right? And so I got to know a lot about that and see that, like, yeah, there's propaganda here, but a piece of propaganda, but there was one fact that was definitely true, which was there is a famine, right? Like, the famine happened. How did it happen? The circumstances of it happening, all of that. Like, there's a lot of bullshit in there, but there was a famine, and everybody knows it, right? Even the Russians are like, yeah, there's a famine. Like, so okay. So then suddenly the capitalists start talking about, oh yeah, the Great Leap Forward, there's a big famine there. And so I started investigating it, right? 30 million people dead. That's the claim, right? 30 million people dead of a famine. And like right away, I'm just like, 30 million's a lot. Like 30 million is a fucking lot. When 1 million people died during the Irish potato famine, right? Or the Bengali famine, right? Everybody knew it was happening as it was happening. It was a big fucking deal. And so I started investigating the famine that occurred under Mao, right? During the Great Leap Forward. And guess what? There was no famine. That's crazy to lie about. That's an insane lie. To just straight up invent a famine that never happened and didn't exist. And how do we know it didn't happen? Because literally no one commented on it as it happened. And even more than that, there wasn't a refugee crisis. 30 million people died. That means you have at least 30 million people running from it. Because they're hungry and starving. Right? Where are they? Where are the people fleeing into India? Where are the people fleeing into Kazakhstan and Mongolia? Where are they? Oh, nowhere. It didn't happen. It didn't exist. Right? Where are the people commenting on it as it was occurring? Where are the ambassadors and the diplomats commenting on it as it happened? Oh, there isn't any. Because it didn't happen. It doesn't exist. At all. At all. Right? So even me, someone who is like extremely skeptical, right? I have extreme skepticism. Even I walked into that being like, well, there must have been a famine, right? Obviously there had to have been like a famine. Like maybe it'll be exactly like the Russian situation where there was a famine, but the reasons for the famine and like all this kind of stuff and so forth. But in this case, no, there wasn't even a famine. It's extreme bullshit. Right? And if they're willing to lie about that, they will lie about anything. Anything and everything. So it's just fucking brutal. Like, we are getting to a point now where, like, if all you did was take the opposite position of what the media is telling you, you'd probably be right. Right? Like, without doing research, without learning anything, without figuring anything out, right? If the headline was, red makes people happy, you should just go, oh, okay, red makes people sad. You should just instantly, and you'd probably be right. Right? Like, and so what's interesting about it, okay? Like, people will tell you that they don't trust the media, but then when it comes to certain subjects, there's literally no, like, they buy right in. They buy right in. So this idea, of so this idea that like it's the powerful people's fault, it's like, well, to a degree. Like, we definitely are enabling them. Like, we're definitely enabling them. And we're enabling them just with our compliance. Right? And we believe the comfortable lies. So what about when the media talks about COVID? Should I do the opposite? I mean, the deal with COVID, as far as the media is concerned, is just to ensure that the money flows in the right direction. That's what the media is doing, right? Scare the shit out of the populace, right? And I mean, there's a certain degree, yeah, like it's a scary situation for sure. Scare the shit out of the populace, but make sure that the only place that they'll be funneled to is where the powerful want the money to be, right? Like this interview here with Dr. Robert Malone has really convinced me of this. That, like, yes, the vaccine is effective. Like, no one, I'm not arguing that, right? But Dr. Robert Malone has pointed out, but there are a lot of things that could be done, right? Why aren't we doing any of those? Oh, because that doesn't actually make a lot of money, right? And one of the most powerful ways that the media misinforms you and lies is through omission, right? That they don't actually even tell a lie. They just omit information completely, right? So, like, a good example of that is the conversation going on about the struggle on the Ukrainian-Russian border, right? They'll report on Moscow's moving of troops. They'll report on anytime Putin does anything and all that, and that'll be completely accurate. In fact, right? All of Putin's actions will be completely reported on. They'll never actually tell you about the coup that happened in Ukraine because of NATO, right? They won't report on that. They certainly won't report on the fact that we're, like, arming terrorist groups, Nazi terrorist groups in Ukraine, right? They won't report on that. So they just omit that, right? And then this narrative is like, when is Moscow going to invade Ukraine? As if Moscow is actually going to invade Ukraine. And the same thing about, like, the Crimea situation, right? They were like, oh, Russia invaded Ukraine once before. They invaded Crimea. They just omit the fact that the Crimean people voted to rejoin Russia, and Russia didn't invade Crimea. They moved troops in to solidify that relationship, right? So the lies of omission are some of the most powerful ones, because you can pretend as though other people's actions are completely unwarranted as long as you don't actually tell the truth about what's actually going on. And that's the case with COVID now, in my view, right? Get the vaccine, vaccines, everybody vaccinate, vaccine. And it's like, yeah, like, yes, absolutely. But there's all this other stuff, right? And we just don't talk about it. And if you do talk about it, you're an anti-vaxxer, right? And why? Why is that the case? Because if you focus on this stuff, it's cheaper, it's effective, you can actually do it, like, pretty easily, right? Whereas vaccines extract a bunch of wealth from the populace and funnel into the hands of the billionaire class. Like, that's what it is, right? You can't get stuff done easily and cheaply. Can't do that. No. Conservative leader O'Toole accuses Trudeau of normalizing lockdowns. O'Toole called on the Trudeau government to find new tools to fight the pandemic. Yeah, like, we got to get this serfs to work, right? Like, well, many of you will die, but that is a sacrifice I am willing to make. Like, get bent. Get fucking bent. YouTube is blocking my messages from your tray. Yeah, Isaac, I don't know what the story is there, dude. Like, sometimes YouTube just does that shit. And and it doesn't seem like there's any rhyme or reason to it. What happens if I do this? Anyway, I can't find any pattern to it. Just keep trying, dude. Just keep trying. It'll make it. Maybe find, like, the one word that you're worried is gonna be is gonna fuck you, and try and shift it around. If you get shot in America, you have to pay the medical bill. Yeah. You are a fraction of 1% of the population, unfortunately, who's willing to critically challenge and investigate these historical truths. And yet that is an indisputable historical fact. There is a real phenomenon that I have definitely noticed, which is people will just espouse something because they think everybody else believes it, right? So you can, like, if you have 100 people and there's, like, a billboard, right, screaming something at you, and it doesn't matter what the billboard's screaming at you, right? The individual will look at the billboard and be like, oh, well, that has to be true, right? Like, there wouldn't, how could it possibly be the case that this enormous mass media machine is screaming this information at me if it wasn't somehow the truth? And even if you were sitting there being like, sounds like bullshit to me, but you think that your neighbor, right, believes it or thinks it's true. And so what you end up with is you end up with a bunch of people who go, that looks like bullshit to me, but then they look at each other and go like, oh yeah, I guess so, right? Yeah, haha. And they agree with one another that it has to be true because they don't want to be on the outside. That's the scariest thing for people. We don't want to be on the out group. And the reality is that the capitalist system generates people to be on the out group. People like myself, right? Like, I don't care if I'm on the out group. I think this culture is worthless. The people who defend this culture are losers. Like, fuck, and if that puts me on the outside, oh no. Like, yeah, I've seen what makes you cheer. Like, I don't give a fuck at all. Like, but it's like when I moved out to the East Coast. When I moved out to the East Coast, every single person I spoke with was an NDPer. Every single one. I never spoke to a conservative. I never spoke to a liberal. Every single one of them was an NDPer, and they all voted liberal because they thought that their neighbor was voting liberal. And that is like a significant issue. The issue that people don't want to be on the outs with their culture. Yeah, the kulaks started the famine. They burnt their crops, killed their cattle, 7 million plus to the 4 billion count of capitalism. Well, and also, like, if Stalin can be blamed for anything during that period of time, it's that he didn't expect that the capitalists, that's who the kulaks are, they're capitalists, he didn't expect they would be as psychotic as they were. I think that's the thing that really surprised him, right? That he knew that there was going to be dissent. Like, he knew there was going to be like a grumbling. I just don't think he understood exactly how self-destructive they were going to be. Like, killing their cattle and burning their own crops. Just don't think he ever saw that that was going to happen, right? And like he must have had some kind of belief that, well, certainly people will still care about their fellow countrymen on a basic level, right? They won't want people to starve and go hungry, right? But yeah, the kulaks did, for sure. If this pandemic's taught us anything, the rich and corrupt keep getting richer through wealth extraction. Yeah, like, that's the system. That's how it works. The pandemic has accelerated things. That's all it's done in terms of this. Like, if it wasn't for the pandemic, the wealth extraction project would continue going on. But and the way that it works in capitalism is like there are tipping points, right? Like if the project of wealth extraction is going like this, right? Well, eventually it does go like, and it does just take off, right? And when it takes off like that, shit goes sideways real fast, real fast. And I'm more and more like, and on a daily level, I'm steadily moving in this direction of like, yeah, the big reason why we're getting pounded in the face with this like COVID shit and be scared of COVID and COVID is because they know that the populace is going to take to the streets. Like, they know this shit is coming. Like, they know it. It's obvious. And so they're just trying to scare the shit out of us, keep us off the streets for as long as they possibly can. And it's working. It's effective. It works. Now, whether that's like conscience, like whether they're sitting there and being like, and then we'll lie to them about it, or we'll elevate it or escalate it or put it in front of their face, like, or whether it's just the result of the natural proceedings of things, the end result's the same, right? People are not taking to the streets. They're not actually doing what has to be done at this stage in the game to tear down this death cult. Like, this is what needs to be done, whether we like it or not. Our only solution is to create independent media and information network. Capitalist media will also always perform their function. That will never change. Yep. My position on the media's COVID narrative is that they're directing the conversation to the vax in order to cover for the lack of other government measures required. Masks didn't say, yeah. Like, I mean, it's pretty clear, especially with like Doug Ford, right? Doug Ford's whole strategy was just get the vaccine, right? And like with Omicron, for God's sakes, like the guy literally was just like, nah, it should be fine. Everybody's vaccinated, right? Nah, bro. Like, sorry. That is the tragedy when they think they're helping when bombing poor people. Yeah, dude, isn't that the fucking craziest? Like literally people, well, but it's always been that way with the West. We've always been this way, right? We've always said, wow, like when we enslaved black people, like when we enslaved the African continent and committed a genocide against the First Nations people, we said that we were doing them a favor. Like, if that's the way we think while literally enslaving people and committing a genocide against another people, we're definitely going to think that way when we're just like dropping bombs on them, right? Argumentum ad pop. I don't actually know what that is. Well, I might know what that is, but I don't know what it is offhand. Let's. I love this kind of shit. Is a fallacious argument which is based on affirming that something is real because the majority thinks so. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's the fancy way of saying it. Look at it. As y'all in the chat trying to learn us all on what's on the proper fallacy terms. Yeah, appeal to popularity, argument from consensus. Yeah, authority of the many. Bandwagon fallacy. Yeah. And people gravitate towards this, right? That's the thing. Like, I really do think it is as simple as like we are monkeys. Like we are monkeys. We're or apes if you want to get real technical. But like we are still very much just like these ape-like creatures who want to be in the tribe. That's it. And so if the tribe starts talking this way, we just go, yeah, okay, yeah. Right? I don't want people to start throwing shit at me. Right? The vax is certainly effective, but without all the other measures, it's not enough on its own, and the other measures threaten profits. Well, we're in a very interesting position right now, which is that the virus is showing us that capitalism is fragile and it fails, right? It can't respond to reality. That the capitalist, that's why it's a death cult. Right? That's why it's based on like a fake ideology that doesn't acknowledge reality. And once reality asserts itself, even in very simple ways, the system crumbles. Right? It can't respond to reality. It can't actually. It's not agile enough. It's not maneuverable enough. It can't predict things. It can't operate in rational ways. Because it's not a rational system, right? It's an ideology. It's the ideology of a death cult. A cult that believes in infinite growth, that chaos brings order, that we don't need to plan anything, that if you give all the power and wealth to a small group of people, that will somehow improve the lives of everybody, and that the desires and the rules that exist in this in nature don't apply to us, right? Like the way that we're operating with the climate change crisis should show you completely clearly that this is a death cult. That we refuse to acknowledge that there are rules in the natural system that we are born into, that if we do not adhere to, there are consequences. We believe that we are the apex predator. We seem to think that everything is like this and that we are here, which is a fucking joke. You've got to be an absolute fucking dunder to think this way. Like, this whole thing, this pyramid idea, like, it's cute and all, but it's not even close. Like, it's not even close. There are natural rules that exist, and we just ignore them. They just They just don't. They're externalities as far as we're concerned. That's how we discuss them, right? Oh yeah, these environmental externalities. Don't worry about them, right? And these externalities are going to come and smash our shit up. Yeah, critical thinking is taboo. So blame the anti-vaxxers for the lack of a complete suppression plan. Yep, absolutely. That's definitely part of it. Like, and don't get me wrong, like a lot of these anti-vaxxer types, like they bring it on themselves for sure. But like, they are not the reason why this is continuing, right? Like they're not. If everybody was vaccinated, we would still be faced with this problem. The problem would still be there, right? It's just that we don't, like, it's this classic, like, it's becoming classic, where like the powerful and the wealthy are starting to just outright say it in front of your face. Yeah, breathable air, workable land, drinkable water, right? Systems that are safe. Absolutely, all of that is real for sure, but money. For billionaires. These are the same. These are equal. We really got to think about this, guys. We really got to think about this. Yikes. And they're being outright about it. They're being explicit. Like, both Trudeau and Chrystia Freeland have essentially said exactly that in front of our face. Like, yeah, guys, yeah, the environment, for sure, all of that. Yeah, but money for billionaires. You got to really think about that, guys. That's serious, right? There's a reason why we need to get these billionaires out of the conversation. Like, they need to be gone. Like, having a single billionaire in your society is a crisis. It is a massive crisis. Like, that needs to be dealt with. Like, you can't ignore it. It's like having a fucking festering wound. Like, you got to do something about it. You can't ignore it. And that's basically what we're doing. Well, even worse than that, we actually say the festering wound is good. Oh yeah, we should let the festering wound spread. That'll be better. And then like when we say like, hey, we should get rid of that festering wound, people are like, oh, you just want to punish successful festering wounds. What about Jack Ma? The Chinese are steadily moving forward and extracting billionaires from their own society. Like they understand that like they had to open up or they didn't have to, but they argued that opening up their markets to capitalists would the classic statement that Deng made was, let some people get rich first. And then after Deng came a whole group, and now Xi is creating systems of redistribution, right? Yeah, so like the Chinese billionaire class does not operate the same way that the Western billionaire class does. Like, China has executed billionaires, right? Really think about this. Like, really, really fucking think about this. Like, if the 2008 financial collapse had have happened in China, the bankers in the billionaire class, the responsible for doing it, would have been executed. Straight up. Like, they wouldn't have been given a reward or a bailout. They would have been fucking executed. Like, China fucking executes billionaires. And I'm like, yeah, great. Hop to. And like, and the Communist Party of China does everything it can to ensure that the billionaire class will not infect the party. Xi Jinping is even doing like a cleanse of his own faction in order to get rid of people who have been corrupted by the billionaire class. And they're moving forward, obviously. Like, and it's obvious that they're doing it. It's the reason why people like Jack Ma feel they need to undermine the Chinese Communist Party, because they know they're not going to be billionaires for much longer. Like, they know. Like, that era in China is coming to an end. Because China has understood that like they let the billionaires in and they got that wealth in and they created these sort of structures and let that kind of happen, right? But now they're starting to see that, oh yeah, billionaires, like they're bad. They don't actually help. That like you've got to actually get rid of these people in your society. Having a billionaire in your society is a major problem. And like and it has been a major problem in China. Like Xi Jinping's entire term in office has been about dealing with these billionaires. Right? Like that's a problem. And China is going to move forward. Like the next generation of China is going to be about cleansing the society of the billionaire class because they're nothing but a problem. Question, can the system be changed from within? No. No. Like that's over, right? And it's over for a real specific reason, right? Like there are billionaires. Like it's the only thing we have left is to surround the halls of power and redraw the Constitution. Like you can't, you're not going to vote your way out of it. You're not going to like elect a party. Like that's not real. It's just straight not going to happen that way. And like even if you started to, right? Well, they're just going to start shooting you. Like it's the idea that we're going to elect some people and get them into positions of power, and then those people are going to actually enact things in order to fight against the billionaire. Like, nope, none of that's going to happen. The system is designed to prevent it. Like it's specifically designed to maintain power. Like, for God's sakes, read the American Constitution. It's specific. It's outright written in the American Constitution that the purpose of the Constitution is to keep power within the wealth of the nation. Like it's right fucking there. Like the purpose of the American Constitution is to maintain the capitalist class exclusively. You're not going to vote your way out of it. And it's beyond a protest. Like it's not just protest. Like and what I'm talking about has precedent. Like sometimes I talk this way and people start looking at me like, "Oh, that's a bit of a fringe kooky." That this happened in the 1930s, right? Like you think Roosevelt did all those reforms and created the New Deal because because people were voting? No, they surrounded the halls of power. That when he was in the White House, he looked out his window and there were people holding big, gigantic signs saying revolution is coming with the communist symbol on it. Millions of people surrounded the halls of power, right? Like and then in the 60s, same exact situation, right? It wasn't the communist symbol. It was like the peace and love movement, right? Merging with the civil rights movement. But like, same shit. Political power grows from the barrel of a gun? Yeah. Like, that's obvious. Like, that's why you shouldn't let, when they come through with this idea that we should disarm the populace, you should definitely stand up against that. Like, no, get fucked. Like, no, absolutely not. Don't get me wrong though. I believe in a peaceful movement. I actually think a peaceful movement would be much, much more effective than a violent one, because they have overwhelming power. No, FDR didn't intend to root out the disease. Like, the mistake that the socialists and the communists made under FDR is that they allowed the capitalists to maintain the means of production. That the capitalist class gave up everything. This was the mistake, and I call it a mistake, right? Like, when FDR was asked at the end of his life, what was your great success? He said, I saved capitalism. That's what he said, right? He didn't say, I improved the quality of life of my citizens. He didn't say, he didn't say, oh, everybody's so much better. I clothed and sheltered everybody, right? He didn't even say, like, we defeated the Nazis or any of that kind of shit. He said, I saved capitalism, right? And he did it by capitulating everything, right? He erected a social security system. He erected an employment benefit. He erected an old age pension. Like, he erected all kinds of new policies and platforms to try to placate the populace into walking away from the one thing that the capitalist class will not tolerate, which is the seizing of the means of production. Which, when we finally get to the point where we are surrounding the halls of power with millions of people again, the one thing we must do is get the means of production away from these psychopaths. Because 100 years ago, we walked away from it, and now we've got a fucking existential climate crisis that's going to destroy the species. And so if we let these guys walk away again with the means of production, in 100 years, our great-grandchildren will be facing yet another existential crisis. And it's only a matter of time until these psychopaths achieve their goal of destroying this place. Which is, it's obviously their goal. They keep fighting for it. So when we surround the halls of power, and when there's millions of people demanding a revolution outside the doors, number one demand. Number one. The means of production transfer away from the capitalist class into the hands of the working class. Period. Anything less than that, we don't accept. We simply do not accept. Because that was the mistake of the communists and the socialists when they surrounded the halls of power under FDR, and we won't repeat that mistake again. Like, these guys are psychopaths. They need to be gone from the conversation. They should not be part of the debate. We shouldn't negotiate with them. They should exit stage left, get into the grave, and be forgotten. And that's how we should be talking to these guys. They are worthless parasites. They should have control of nothing. We shouldn't, like, if they talk, we should ignore them. We should literally laugh at them and walk away. Like, they're embarrassing. Yeah, FDR prevented a revolution. That's exactly right. He did the bidding of the capitalist class. He did what needed to be done on behalf of his peers, the capitalists. Like, he understood that it was a class war. It was a class war, and he won. Mao would have also made the market reforms, but he feared it would result in a Western liberal democracy. Yeah, that's the reason why Mao didn't move forward on it. Like, the West has always interpreted the relationship between Mao and Deng as like, as they hated each other, and Mao resigned in disgrace and all this kind of, it's like total bullshit, right? Mao didn't do it because Mao didn't have the heart for it. That's really what it is. Like, Mao was a bit of a purist, and so he knew and understood what had to be done, right? And Deng did it. That's all. Like, that's it, right? And the reason why it worked, right? The reason why it worked, and the reason why China didn't descend into the same kind of neoliberal capitalist fucking hellhole is because of the strength of the Chinese system. Right? That the Chinese system, instead, like, unlike our democracy, where a party comes in and destroys everything, right? And then rebuilds from scratch so that another party can come in and destroy everything and rebuild from scratch, instead, which creates, like, factions that are constantly at odds with one another, constantly fighting. Instead of that, it's more of a passing of the baton, right? Where, like, Mao passes the baton to Deng, and Deng passes the baton to whoever, and who passes it to Xi Jinping, and they have a plan, like a 100-year plan with 5-year increments, right? Where they look at it, and maybe the new guy can come in and they can look at the increment and be like, okay, that's not actually quite working, so let's adjust. So instead of it being an obliteration and a restart, it's like a slight adjustment on a plan that is larger than their reign will be, and they know it, right? Like, there's a reason why the Chinese are like jumping ahead of us and making us look stupid. Because we are stupid. Like, that's really what it is. Like, we are stupid. Like, we have all of this technology, we have all of this capability, we have all of this know-how, we have all of this stuff, and we squander it. We completely squander it on, like, Kim Kardashian, Paris Hilton bullshit. Like, the Chinese are taking all of this technology and all of this stuff and actually going, how do we use this stuff to benefit the populace? In 10 years' time, we're going to look like a fucking backwater. Like, we are. We're going to look like a fucking backwater. We're going to look stupid. Stupid. Stupid is the word. Like, we're going to look very, very dumb. Like the difference between now and like the 70s. Like, think about technology in the 70s. Think about like a computer in the 70s, right? Think about that kind of technology. Put yourself in that kind of mindset, like the tube televisions, right? Like, everything's big and chunky and clunky, right? Which, you know, that's fine. It's the 70s, right? Well, by the time we're in like 2040, right? The difference between what China is doing and where we are will be like the 70s to now. It's gonna be fucking big, and it's gonna be obvious. Like, if we take for example, high-speed rail. High-speed rail alone. Okay, forget everything else. High-speed rail alone. If we started building high-speed rail today, right now, and just started moving forward with it, like, and everybody was on the same page and nobody got in the way and everything was about build as much high-speed rail as you possibly could, and we started right now, we would still be 20 years behind the Chinese. Like, we're fucked. They've got 1.6 billion people, all of whom are on a chart to improve their society as fast as they possibly can. We haven't even begun. We haven't even started to accept the base premise that everybody should have their lives improved. We're still debating whether or not everyone should have access to food and shelter. Like, that's where we are. And we've created like internal factions in our society that actively fight one another. Like, we're fucked. Like, I cannot overstate how fucked we are. And it's going to get obvious. It's going to get so fucking obvious. In 10 years' time, like, Europe is going to fucking abandon us, as they should, frankly. Because we're going to, like, the Americans are going to re-elect a Republican. And, like, Donald Trump or no, whatever. The Republicans are fucking psychos. Like, they genuinely don't think climate change exists. Like, there's a small group of them that actually do say, okay, climate change exists, but who cares? We're not going to do anything about it. So they don't think that the largest existential threat that's facing humanity today, they don't think it exists. The vast majority of them are actively calling for crusades. They use the word crusade, right? Like, this is a terrifying fucking cult that, when it seizes power yet again, will lay waste to everything around it and will actively pursue a path of self-isolation and total devastation of the entire planet. The Europeans are going to bail on these guys. They're going to bail fucking hard. Why? Because there's a stable force in the world that's actually attempting to improve stuff and build things and do stuff that's worth a goddamn. We don't give a fuck. And that's the best part. Like, and we don't give a fuck at all. Like, we're literally sacrificing everything we have so that 5 guys can get a big pile of money. Which, incidentally, love to point this out, money's not real. We're straight up destroying the planet for fucking digital Pokemon cards. Like, that's how goddamn embarrassing we are as a people. We're unbelievably embarrassing. And the people who defend this system are just psychotic. They've lost their minds. They're unhinged. Completely unhinged. Well, so when are we going to move to the mountains and practice our guerrilla warfare? Yeah, the West's plan is to drag China into World War III and nuke it into oblivion. Most likely through Taiwan declaring independence, our leaders. No, the reality, right? Like, the threat of nuclear obliteration, like, literally the only thing that's the saving grace in this regard is that, like, there's some sense of self-preservation, right? We're not gonna nuke stuff. To me, it's far more likely that the nuclear question will come into play on accident. Like, I think that the movie Dr. Strangelove was accurate in this regard. That nuclear war or a nuclear event won't occur because some madman gets control and tries to nuke and all that kind of stuff. That it'll be mainly accidental, right? Like, that there'll be like some rogue agent that does something and it creates a chain of events, right? Like, that kind of narrative makes a lot more sense to me than like a ramping up to nuclear war, because there's like there ultimately comes a point of like self-preservation of like, oh yeah, they'll nuke us back. Like, don't fucking think they won't, right? Like, my favorite is when they drew up plans on how to fight against China. There was like this built-in narrative of like, yeah, China won't use nukes on us. It's like, what the fuck? Yeah, they will. Yeah, they will. Like, you genuinely think they won't? Like, and so you're saying like China is so evil that we need to fight them, but they're not so evil that they'll use nukes? Like, what the fuck? Like, and that's just it. Exactly. China has already won, right? The most the U.S. can do is covert regime change in other countries, but that just adds fuel to the fire as these countries are turned away from America and towards China. Exactly. Like, the game is over for America. Like, it's over. They have no play, right? Their only play is just self-immolation. Drop the nukes. Like, that's the only play they have left. And like, when the Republicans come in, it's going to get fucking obvious. Because the Republicans aren't going to like accept it. Like, the Democrats have accepted it, right? They've looked at the world stage and they've been like, oh, okay, like we're kind of fucked. Like, we can control like small regions and like do what we can to try and get like oil and like control like the dollar and all this kind of stuff. The Republicans are going to get in and they're going to like pretend like they're strong, and they're going to wag their dick around and act like Donald Trump, basically. And the entire rest of the world is going to like look at them and be like, that's terrifying, right? And it's just going to completely alienate them from the entire world. And what's so sad about the whole thing is that it doesn't need to be this way at all. Like, it doesn't need to be this way at all. We literally could just go, oh, like, why not just trade peacefully with China, accept that money isn't actually real, quietly just sort of improve the quality of life for our own citizens. We could do that. We could definitely do that. But arrogance and hubris are real. Like, we're an arrogant people who believe that we should own the world, I guess. Like, as if it's something that can be owned. Yeah, first time since Columbus that a non-European country is seriously challenged for global hegemony. It's going to be interesting. Well, and I mean, what's the most interesting part about it is the method they have chosen to challenge, right? Like, how has America maintained its supremacy for this long? Well, first of all, it wasn't blown up during World War II. That helped. But basically just through military might, right? Just keep going in and destroying South America, Africa, right? The Middle East, right? Just and telling Russia, like, hey, don't fuck with us. Like, don't fuck around, right? Fomenting coup even in Russia, right? Like, sure, Europe has managed to kind of create like social democracies and all this kind of stuff because they were the primary victims of World War II. Like, if capitalism destroyed anything, it's Europe during World War II, right? And so they're trying to do everything they can to not have that happen again, right? And the United States has been going around blowing everything up. Well, how's China done it? How's China become like the global hegemony? By literally building. Like, by just being like, oh, we could just like quietly build a bunch of rail, right? Create like a huge trade networks. And like the way the United States and Canada talk about China is childish. Like, it's so fucking dumb. Like, oh no, China's trading effectively. And what's so hilarious about the rise of China is that it's like a complete self-inflicted wound. We're going to move all our manufacturing over to China and then we'll be able to get a bunch of cheap stuff. Yeah, har, 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 har. Well, now all the manufacturing is in China, you dumb fuck. Like, like, oh, the United States is going to go to war with China. What? No, it's not. Like, no, it's not. Can you imagine if it did? Do you know what would happen if the United States actually went to war with China? Like, in a serious way? Like, if the United States even went over and started blowing up ships, do you know what happened? Look, let's take a look at the Taiwan situation, for example. Let's say China starts to move in military troops into Taiwan, and the United States actually goes, we're going to actually really prevent you from doing that. We're going to blow up a bunch of your ships. War with China in the South China Sea. Okay, well, all of the stuff that's coming from China stops. Do you know what that's going to do? Like, do you know what that's going to do to the United States? It's going to absolutely fucking cripple it. It's going to cripple it completely. They're not going to be able to get basic goods. Like, that's how deep into the cult these capitalists have gone. They have ceded their own national security. They have ceded their own stability and national security, and they've handed it to the Chinese. So that when the Chinese actually finally move military into Taiwan, the Americans are going to go, hey, and that's it. Why? Because the reality is American capitalism is weak. It's weak. It literally cannot fight against China. Because China can cripple the United States like that. All they would have to do, literally, all they would have to do is stop sending shit into the United States. Look at how much shit we have that says made in China. Look how much shit we have that says made in China. What? You think if we start bombing China or start bombing their trade routes or start bombing their shit, they're going to just keep sending us that shit? No. Like, no. Not at all. Like, your computers are made in fucking China. Like, all of this shit, the manufacturing base of the world is China. Game's over. Game is over. Like, it's check fucking mate. Right? Like, we're over here playing checkers and they're playing fucking chess. And even if we start playing chess, we realize, oh, they're playing a whole other more advanced game than we are. Right? Like, these guys are making us look like chumps, and it's not that hard to do. And we keep playing into their hand. Right? And the United States could cripple China by blocking the South China Sea. China imports a majority of its fuel by sea. Both nations would lose, but like, no. China is connected to the vast majority of the population of the world, and also has a population of 1.6 billion people. Like, sure, yeah, the United States could start blocking the South China Sea and could start being a pain in the ass and all that kind of stuff. But, like, the United States loses that. Big time. Like, sure, China goes down a little bit. Like, sure, oh yeah, China, oh, that's unfortunate. Right? Oh yeah, okay. But, like, the United States loses that exchange. Big time. Big time. Yeah, integrating markets promotes peace. Trade is peace. Trade is peace. Fuel is important. That's why Japan attacked Pearl Harbor. I mean, yeah. Like, I'm not arguing that fuel is not important, but, like, China, like, the Belt and Road Initiative alone, okay? Like, and the Chinese are well aware of this. Like, they know. That's why they're trying to get trade out of the South China Sea. And that's the reason why they're building this. Right? Like, if the United States starts acting up in the South China Sea and starts bombing shit and starts destroying stuff, like, China's still got these connections. This still exists. Like, the United States has nothing even close to this. Like, they're not even remotely close to this. And, like, should the United States stop trade with China? China's got lots of options. China's got lots of options. Right? If China stops trading with the United States, what's its options? Really? Like, what are its options? It's put sanctions everywhere. Right? Like, the United States has fundamentally isolated itself. If you put sanctions on everybody, you're the one that's isolated. Right? Like, if your whole strategy is to just say, I'm just going to take my ball and go home, well, eventually people are going to say, well, go home. We got another ball. America has lots of options for cheap manufacturing. If you say so, bud. I don't see it. Like, what? Like, not on the scale that the Chinese have. India, Bangladesh, Vietnam, Philippines, great. It's not going to replace what China is bringing to the table. Not even close. Like, you're losing like 30-40%. Like, it's an enormous decline. That's going to have enormous impacts. Like entire political careers will end. You're talking about a disruption in the United States that is going to absolutely explode entire political parties. Like, the Americans will not tolerate an end to the goods coming in. They just won't. They're way too childish for that. Like, you're not going to be able to stand in front of them and be like, yeah, sorry, you can't get your chicken tendies anymore. You know, we got to go to war with China. Like, they're not going to tolerate that. They're fucking not. And, like, they're not going to suddenly be able to swing it all over into India or any of that kind of shit. Like, it simply isn't going to work that way. And, like, especially when you consider, like, China over the last 30, 40 years has poured all of its resources into actually improving its industrial sectors and manufacturing sectors and its own society. For God's sakes, they've built, like, dozens of cities over the course of like 20 years. India is still like an impoverished nation. It's going to take like 20, 30 years before they even get close to that. I mean, the shift can happen, but it would require an investment that the capitalists refuse to put in. Right? Like, they just won't do it. And, like, you are, like, genuinely looking at a period of time in the United States where the rich are just going to take their money and they're just going to run to their fucking pedophile islands and, like, rule from there. Like, it's what happened here, right? Like, it's what happened here. That's what do you think they were doing in Taiwan? So, like, The Americans will never actually go to war with China because they are way more beholden to China than China is beholden to them. It's the reason why China can treat the United States the way it does, right? Because they don't actually, like, the United States is a market of 300 million people, right? Like, sure, it's a market. They've got lots of money, right? They've got lots of clout in terms of the financialization and all that kind of stuff. But, like, the USA can exploit the Rust Belt for cheap manufacturing for a while, but you've got to actually build that, right? That takes a minute. It takes a moment to do that, right? And there's no indication that they're even interested in doing that. Like, they don't plan. They don't have ideas or thoughts, right? Like, you're talking about, like, you're talking about a buildup that would just, like, after 5 to 10 years, the workers will unionize. There's literally no alternative to China for capital. Yeah. And China would not go to war with America because China cares about making sure its prosperity increases. Yep. Basically, the trade has increased a good amount of peace. Yes, that is trade is peace. You can't simultaneously trade with a nation while bombing it. Like, you can't do that, right? And it's like, well, yeah, think about that, actually. That's a really good point, Nova Scotia. Walmart is the #1 employer in the United States, right? And Walmart, the reason why Walmart was so successful is because they are the avenue for China to send its goods into the United States. That the Walmart family linked up with the Chinese and distribute goods into the United States. And if that ends, well, who's the #1 employer in America? So you're talking about mass unemployment. You're talking about a company that's literally going to shutter its doors, right? You're essentially creating a Great Depression instantaneously if you go to war with China. Like, the day you go to war with China, you're creating a massive depression in your society instantly. You can't do it. You can't do it. Amazon. Ugh, Bezos. Yeah, sorry. Just thinking about stupid Jeffrey Bezos and how fucking stupid he is. Communists have the US by the money balls, and that's bad when what you think is awesome is money. Yeah, when you worship money, right? Like, and that's what's happening. That's the reason it's a cult, is that we worship money. We have put money ahead of everything. Like, some people articulate it as if it's like the profit motive, right? Like, but like, it has nothing to do with anything. Like, that's what's so fucking annoying about it. Is that, like, the profit motive, the chase for money, all of this kind of stuff, but, like, you're seeing it happen now. You've got these billionaires who have all this money, and they're just like, well, I've got all this money. I did it. And they, like, trash talk each other on Twitter. It's like, so what is it for? Like, what are you doing with it? What's the point? And now they're turning around and just buying up land because they've got nothing else to buy. Right? What's that doing? Jacking up the price of housing, jacking up the price of land. Nobody can actually afford anything anymore. Right? And it's just, they have it because they want it. It's dumb. It's super dumb. Reposting this comment because I think I missed. Look up Beau of the Fifth Column. Let's talk about the US and China contest will end. Oh yeah, I like Beau of the Fifth Column. Yeah. Let's go. Let's go, Brandon. Ugh. Let's talk about how the US and China's contest will end. Yeah, I like this guy. He's a good old boy. You know what I like about this guy is that he's... what I really, really like about this guy is he's clearly, like... I don't want to say, like, on the right wing, but, like, he appeals to that group. And what I really like about this guy is that he clearly... he's really working hard to make, like... You can see that there's a lot of right-wing people in his life. You can see that about this guy. And how he talks about communism, he talks about this stuff, but he's not trying to divide. He is trying to find a way to get like these ideas kind of in the same room together so that they can look at one another at least. And it's respectable. I really like this guy. So let's put this stuff on.
Well, howdy there, Internet people. It's Bo again.
Run off and get
So
some
today
water.
we're going to talk a little foreign policy again. Semi-recently, we'd been discussing the developing near-peer contest that is emerging between the United States and China. Since then, a lot of people have been asking, how does that end? You know, we can see that it's starting. It's not starting. It has started. So people are wondering what happens next. What is the overall strategy? How do near-peer contests tend to resolve themselves? There are two main strategies, two main methods of conclusion, and the easiest way to sum it up is fall in line or fall apart. Under the fall in line strategy, the United States would look to China and try to encourage it to accept second place. That's really what it boils down to. It would use a lot of diplomacy, economic might, soft power to contain China and keep it out of things that are historically U.S. spheres of influence. If you're looking for a historical example, think containment, domino theory from the first Cold War. The idea then was to keep the Soviets out of other countries. It's the same thing. They would want to keep Chinese influence out of other countries. The other method, so that's fall in line. Fall apart is when the United States decides, hey, China is not going to accept second place. They're not going to fall into the traditional U.S.-led international order, so we got to break them. And this is where the U.S. takes all of its might, all of its diplomatic power, economic power, soft power, and tries to box China in tightly rather than loosely, and keep it boxed in until internal pressures fracture it. Things going on inside the country lead the regime to fall apart. Think the end of the first Cold War. That's what that looks like. When you listen to foreign policy pundits in the United States, they talk about this. However, something that I've noticed is that they presuppose a U.S. win because the United States has been the dominant power in the world since the end of World War II. They're not, they don't really seem to be entertaining the Chinese response. U.S. foreign policy does not occur in a vacuum. Every move will have a counter move. Remember, poker game, international poker game, and everybody's cheating. The Chinese government isn't going to sit there and just allow the United States to do these, to engage in this behavior. They're going to respond. And that's one of the more concerning things about it. Because when you're talking about the fall in line aspect, because of the previous administration withdrawing on our allies, we don't really have the best standing. So the U.S. saying, oh, don't side with the Chinese, don't worry, we'll protect you, that track record shot. The Chinese will be able to successfully counter that. And then when it comes to the fall apart scenario, which country's on better footing domestically? It's not the United States. China doesn't have an opposition party that is questioning the very system of governance. That's not a thing. The Republican Party in the United States is obviously questioning the validity of democracy itself in a lot of ways. But aside from that, if they were to obtain power, at least the America First Trumpism side of things, they want to withdraw. They don't want to be the international leader anymore. They don't want to be on the foreign policy stage. It's America first. In a weird way that, I don't want to say makes them allies, because that makes it sound like there's some kind of collusion, and I have no evidence to suggest that. But the interests of the Republican Party and the American first ideology aligns with Chinese foreign policy. They mesh very well together. The U.S. doesn't have an advantage like that when it comes to dealing with China. The pundits that you hear discussing this, they seem to forget that the United States had a really bad few years. And that bad few years really manifested itself overseas. We sold out a lot of allies. We didn't keep a lot of promises. We pulled out of a lot of treaties. It's going to take a long time to regain the world's trust there. And then when it comes to the fall apart aspect, it's not China who has the internal divisions that can be easily exploited. It's the United States. The idea of presupposing a U.S. win, that's one of those things that could lead to catastrophe. You know, it's easy to make the assumption that we'll win because in near-peer contests, the United States typically does, historically speaking. But you don't win the next contest by preparing for the last and doing the same thing that you did last time, especially when the situations are dramatically different. If the United States is smart, it wouldn't have started this, to be honest. But since it has started, if they're going to play their cards right at that international poker table, the best move is to move very, very slowly, because the United States has a lot of making up to do all over the world. But moving slowly also assumes that the Republican Party won't obtain power anytime soon. Because if the faction of the Republican Party that supports America first, that Trumpist mentality, if it obtains power, especially in the executive branch, the Chinese government is going to have, free reign, because the United States will be pulling back. So, to answer the direct questions, it ends with either fall in line or fall apart. If you're listening to a lot of pundits talking about foreign policy today, just understand that it is very noticeable that almost all of them are assuming before the contest, I hope it doesn't turn into a conflict, before the contest even gets started, they're assuming a U.S. win. And I don't know that there's grounds to make that assumption. Anyway, it's just a thought. Y'all have a good day.
He's just I appreciate his soft-spokenness, and I appreciate how he comes into the conversation with humility. That's what I really like about Bo. And it looks like in the chat here, there's some questions about his background and all this kind of stuff. You know what? We're all colorful characters. Everyone's got a history. Right? And like, I don't know anything about it. And I don't care to kind of let that stuff hold. Private military contractor at one point, right? Like, be interesting to hear him talk about it and to know more about that. But Sal, you said something here I'd like to talk about. Well, I agree with a good amount of stuff you're saying, but this is the most prosperous time in human history. Least amount of global poverty, war, food insecurity, etc. There has to be something said for the current system. So, I think part of the thing on this is like least amount of global poverty. Well, that doesn't have much to do with capitalism, frankly. Like a lot of in spite of capitalism, right? War. I mean, depends who you talk to. Like, is there a war going on in the United States or in like talk to the Afghani people about that one. Talk to the Iraqis about that one. Right? Talk to the South Americans about that one, right? Food insecurity, etc. I think the thing that's got people really riled up these days, right, is that we know that with the amount of technological progress, we got the amount of what's called prosperity. Well, you know what we don't have a lot of these days? Time, right? Like medieval peasants had more time than we have, right? Like we literally sell ourselves into this system, and we don't actually have a lot of time. We're given like what, 10 vacation days less in America? Like, there is no resource that is more valuable than our time, and seems like we don't get a lot of that these days. And also there's a big concern in my view. Like, yeah, we have all this prosperity, all this kind of stuff. Well, if the nukes start dropping, none of that's going to matter, right? Like, none of that's going to matter. And what's most concerning to me about the current system that we're in, like my number one concern, really, is we are not de-escalating. We are not demilitarizing. We are not denuclearizing. Like, even Ronald Reagan, the guy that we're all supposed to jerk off about, right? Fucking even Reagan denuclearized. He looked at the situation and he thought to himself, yeah, we should have less nukes, right? And when he went out of office, I believe even Clinton was denuclearizing. George W. Bush started the process of renuclearization, of building more nuclear bombs. That's concerning to me. My position on nuclear bombs is that they shouldn't exist, that the building of nuclear bombs themselves should be a war crime. That we simply shouldn't have them at all. Just the accidental aspect of it. Just the idea that these things can just fucking go off on accident. Like, we really should not have nukes built and ready to go. Like, it just shouldn't be a thing. And for all the prosperity and all that kind of stuff, like, yeah, if shit starts going off, like, you're talking about thousands and thousands and thousands of years of progress can be wiped out in a day. Like, no thanks. Nope. And also, I just like, hey, we should have, like, why are we wasting so much time on this capitalist bullshit? Like, literally. Because I think mad is what stopped us from having the level of war seen in the 1900s. Like, sorry, mate. I think I lost something in your comment. Oh yeah, like capitalism went to war with itself, basically. Like World War I and World War II are capitalist wars, right? Like they went to war with themselves, and continued sort of to. Oh, I see. I understand. Mutual mutually assured destruction stops seeing the level of wars in the 1900s. I mean, isn't that sad, right? Isn't it sad that we like literally need the threat of annihilation in order to stop fucking just fighting one another? Like, it's fucking the saddest shit ever. That we can't just look at one another and be like, hey, maybe we could just like be nice to one another. Lopez Obrador from Mexico has been telling Biden that they need to change or they're going to be left out. And then you follow that up with has been, oh, you just said it again because I didn't say Isaac. But yeah, Like, it is time to get, like, I've been saying this a lot on this channel recently, which is like, we are going to have to beg to the United States, like, please do not annihilate the planet. Like, we are going to have to beg about it. It's going to happen. And I actually think Canada is the best positioned in order to do it. That, like, if you believe in electoral politics, then you should be voting for people who are going to beg the United States, please do not destroy the planet. Like, and all the world has left is to isolate the United States. Like, it's the only thing it can do anymore, right? Like, if you were to, like, personify each nation and put it on a playground, right? Well, eventually you've got to kind of isolate the person. Like, there's a guy walking around with a fucking club beating the shit out of people. Like, eventually you got to stand up and just be like, no, we can't trade. Like, we literally cannot afford to keep this going. And yeah, Biden can't do shit. Well, and certainly isn't interested in it. There's legitimate things that Biden could do, by the way. Like, if Biden were a serious person, which he isn't, right? But if he were a serious person, he would eliminate student debt. He could do that. He could do that today. It would take him 30 seconds. And but he's not going to, right? Because he's not serious. Like, he doesn't actually give a shit about anybody. And, like, yeah, Mexico's got to tell by like the United States is going to get left out. And it's not going to get left out. And the only country that's to blame for that is the United States. And it's very difficult for me to believe moving forward that the United States is going to maintain its stability. Right? Like, empires balkanize. Things break apart. The divides within the United States are deep, and the desire for separation is there. And you're already seeing it begin to happen. The country is already beginning to fracture in serious ways. Like, and literally their choices are between a group of people who are madly working to destroy everything and a group of people who are happy with the steady decline. Hard times create strong people create good times create weak people, etc. I mean, I take a look at it a little bit more structurally. Like, if you build strong structures, right, those structures will get you through good times and bad. Right? Is that a Nazi slogan? I don't necessarily agree with that, Sal. Like, it's easy to pile on the boomers. And don't get me wrong, like, every generation has something that you can talk about. But, like, the boomers were the ones who were fighting the civil rights movement. They were the ones that were involved in the free love movement. They were the ones that got a lot of stuff out of the Nixon administration, right? But simultaneously, they're also the ones who fought against segregation, right? So it's very complex. And in my view, what's happening right now is like, what we are really seeing is the result of television propaganda. Like, the real thing that you should be sympathetic towards the boomers is, like, these guys got fucking bombarded with television propaganda and not just a single event, like wave after wave after wave after wave after wave of television propaganda. And new forms of propaganda that became more sophisticated, right? Like, the initial waves of television propaganda, when you look back on them, are actually very rudimentary, childish even, right? And but now it's getting more like, the boomers were the ones that really, really became the major consumers of the 24/7 television news cycle, right? Like, that way of consuming news. It's like a new form, right? And like, this has a significant impact. And I'm continuously okay, the chat has gone into this conversation. Let's dig in. It's a good opportunity to like, is this a Nazi slogan? Is it a Nazi slogan? Because that's the kind of thing that, like, you know, like my dad would say. The internet thinks it comes from this guy, Michael Hopf. Those who remain. Probably not, though. Like, this seems like one of these sort of ubiquitous... Here, let's go deeper. Let's go deeper. Let's go deeper. Nazi slogan. I am not seeing like this doesn't seem like it's very... Yeah, I'm not seeing like a direct one-to-one tie. You know, like, it's like the kind of, like, sure, maybe like a Nazi at some point said something like this, but it just doesn't seem like it's central. You know what I mean? Yeah, like, it's a conservative way to say things, certainly, but there's nothing like... I don't necessarily disagree with it, Sal. Like, you know what I mean? Like, hard times create strong people create good times create weak people. Like, there is something to it, and that I understand what you're saying. But like, again, I fall back on like, this is why it's important to create strong, stable institutions, because people die, institutions don't. Right? And if you create strong, stable institutions with the concept of the handing of the baton, right? You're constantly trying to create something that one generation can hand off to another generation, and the integrity of the institution is the strength of it. Then you can have weak people, but they have to operate within the structure of the institution itself. And that's, to me, what's more important than anything. Yeah, Loaf, I don't think it does. I don't think it does. I mean, feel free to correct me on that. I'm happy to. And like, this is the most cursory research possible, but like, yeah. No, it's like one of those kind of colloquialisms that conservatives sort of use, right? I will never die. Thanks, Robin. Good strategy. Good strategy. Just don't die, right? Like, you know what, guys? People keep choosing to die, and I'm just like, I'm just not going to do it. You know, I'm just not going to age. You know, I'm good. I'm going to stay right here. We can do that, right? It's totally fine, totally normal. Anyway. Yeah, 80s and 90s propaganda reach its heights. Yeah. Well, and now they're starting to figure out how to use the internet better, right? Like, you're starting to see, and there are many different models on the internet right now for how to propagandize people. And part of the major issue There's an entire Wikipedia page dedicated to how bad media coverage of the DPRK is. Yeah, like, I mean, uh, uh, the internet is such like a mixed bag, right? Like, it's difficult to propagandize because of the internet, because you have like independent sources who can gain a lot more traction more easily because of the internet. They're starting to figure it out. They will. Like, ultimately, they will figure it out. I think that the death of the internet uh, is going to happen should they actually manage to get the plan of what they're calling the Internet 3.0. Like, Internet 1.0 was really kind of like basic text-based sort of communication. Then Web 2.0 allowed people to really set up websites and have like a better kind of thing like that. But private institutions, the best that they could do was set up their own website, right? And so you could have like Facebook or YouTube or these kinds of stuff, but so could anybody else, right? Anybody else could set up something else like that too. Web 3.0 will privatize the infrastructure of the internet itself. And that's when the internet will actually die. Because people like myself or Chris Hedges or Noam Chomsky, any of these guys, they'll just be cleansed, right? They'll just be removed from the internet. That the like private, like, you won't be able to be an independent journalist on the internet because people like Jeff Bezos will just scrub you. You'll just be gone because they'll own the infrastructure of the internet itself, which is the end game for how the internet is going to die. And it's already in the books. Like, they're already talking in Congress about it. They're already working towards that end. And like, they know exactly why they're doing it. They know what they're doing it for. They're doing it to kill this sort of discussion, right? Like, that a big reason why we look back, like, a big reason why we do look back on disdain to the boomers is because the boomers were like the last generation where they were significantly gate kept. You know, all of their information came through gatekeepers. Whereas it's not true anymore, right? Like, the gatekeepers are weakened. That, like, for God's sakes, like, the rise of Joe Rogan alone, right, shows that that's the truth. There's just no more gatekeepers, and they want the gatekeepers back. And the way they're going to do it is they're going to privatize the internet. And the private owners will own the internet, the infrastructure of the internet itself, and people will just be cleansed. Even just hundreds of counterpoint propaganda, which is what we have, is enough to combat your particular propaganda. Yeah, it doesn't have to be the truth, yeah. But then I'll just go outside. Checkmate, Congress. Yeah, exactly. And there are actually, like, Noam Chomsky actually does talk about this. He actually thinks that if they were to shut the internet down or something like that, it would actually backfire. He claims and believes, and I don't know how much I agree with this, but I see where he is coming from. But he thinks that if you were to shut the internet down, people would just immediately start talking to one another on a one-to-one sort of basis, and that would actually be more effective, and that it would completely backfire. And I don't know. I kind of see where he's coming from. I kind of see, like, if someone like me, like, if they shut the internet down, I would just start talking to the people around me, right? Like, I'm not going to stop doing this, right? Like I'm going to get the ham radio. I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. And, like, that might actually be more effective, right? Like, imagine me doing what I'm doing, but instead I'm, like, knocking on the doors. Well, suddenly instead of having, like, a spread out people across the globe, it'd be like a concentrated group of people in one spot, right? That might actually be more effective. Am I talking myself into just, like, running for office? Is that what's happening? Anyway. I just saw a graph from the Ontario website that the majority of people in ICU are non-COVID related, yet the PM said we don't want the ICUs filled up with the unvaxxed. What? Government going misinfo 101? Yeah. Like, it's well, and blaming the unvaxxed is their go-to now, right? Any wedge that they can create, right? Oh, it's the problem is this group of people. Certainly has nothing to do with government. Certainly has nothing to do with us, right? It's this group of people. Everybody shit on this group of people. They're the ones, right? And I mean, there's a certain degree, like the reason why that's an effective statement is that there's a certain degree of truth to it, but it's not the whole story, right? It's not the whole story. Are you active on Twitter? I fucking don't like Twitter. I just don't like it. Like it just seems so faffy to me. It's very much like, get on Twitter, make a statement. Like I understand why people do like it. Like it's an interesting like aggregate kind of thing, right? Like statements like this. In a rare move, opposition leaders Horvath, Del Duca, and Schreiner are planning a joint news conference Thursday to call on Ford to recall the legislature for an emergency session to confront the harsh reality of the province's health staffing crisis. Union leaders to also attend. Like, this is a good political move, by the way, for all of them. Like, first of all, it really actually does show you that, like, Horvath and Del Duca and these guys are like, yeah, like the job is actually beyond, like, just trying to get power. Like, it is, like, this matters, right? There's a crazy thing. Like, nurses are fucking leaving, right? There is a health staffing crisis because we have been abandoning our health professionals. And guess what? They're abandoning us back. Like, it's a big fucking problem, right? So, like, this kind of statement, it's interesting, like, and to follow someone like Richard Southern, right? Like, to get, like, these little news blurbs or any of this kind of stuff. But, like, for someone like me, I'm just, I don't know, I put my shit up and it's just like, okay. Like, I don't know, Twitter. Fucking Twitter. I kind of prefer, like, a longer form, you know? I prefer more, like, back and forth and comment based, and I don't know. Like, Twitter seems up its own ass the whole fucking time. And I don't know if you care about my account. It's the Canuck Commie. I believe that's right. Is that right? How do I even look? I don't even know. Yeah, the Canuck Commie. I tried to use the Canadian Commie, but I think I was like one letter too long or something. So, which was annoying. Which was annoying. I think boomers were the first generation of children raised by a damaged generation because of the war. I mean, that is definitely part of it. Like, the war fucked people up, right? I'll keep helping Isabella flying. Yeah, brilliant. Man, the debates in May are going to be wild. Yeah, they are going to be interesting. Well, and, like, one of the things that, like, you got to give it to Ford. Like, he's good at messaging. Like, he knows how to do good messaging, right? Like, he was raised by a sloganeering father, right? And he knows how to do it. He's really good at it. Like, and he just seems to be able to punch his way through, you know? Like, you got to respect Ford on that level. On that level of, like, he's good at sloganeering. He's good at messaging. He knows what people actually want to hear. And he's really, really, really good at lying. Like, he's a very effective liar. And, yeah, Twitter is where human discourse goes to die. That's kind of it, right? Like, I don't mind it from, like, a just, like I think it's really strong from, like, a news kind of perspective, you know? Like, headline. It's really strong for that. That, like, if all you did was follow journalists, and especially, like, local news, like, if you follow, like, your local police force, right? Well, they're putting up kind of blurbs or, like, hey, there's this, there's that, right? Like, that's useful. So it ends up being like a flyer, you know? But people don't use it that way, you know? Like, if everybody I followed on Twitter was just using it as, like, a flyer to be like, hey, this is happening in your neighborhood, like, this is what's going on, like, then I would be like, oh, yeah, cool. But, like, people kind of, I don't know, they pretend like there's a worthwhile back and forth on it, and I find the whole thing to be annoying. That's Twitter to me. Like, some people really love it. Like, I shouldn't trash talk it too loudly while I've got, like, Pissed Off Canadian right here and he's in the chat. But, like, I don't know. I find Twitter to be annoying, mainly. So I don't interact with it very often, and I don't know, maybe I should. I don't know. Buck a beer! Exactly. Ford for the people, yeah. Yep, Canada can manufacture 14 billion in arms for Saudi Arabia, but has difficulty when it comes to vaccines, N95 masks, hospital ventilators. I don't know, giving houses to the homeless, that kind of normal shit that normal societies would actually do. Well, and you can tell that people are getting fed up with Doug Ford. Like, you know, when the National Post is publishing these sorts of articles, Doug Ford's senseless lockdown is an admission of failure, right? There was another really good one. Why didn't Ford act earlier on Omicron, right? Like, soaring Omicron sick day absences forced businesses to shorten hours and cut production. Like, I am more or less of the opinion that this culture needs to, like, take, like, a 5-day break. We literally need to just go sit in the corner for a minute. Just be like, and really think about what we're doing. Like, nothing we're doing is good. Like, we're not the good guys in this conversation. Like, not even a little. We're not even trying to be the good guys. Like, we're actively abandoning our own citizens and telling them to, like, we'll stand up straight with your shoulders back and go buck up. Like, fuck you. Get fucked. Toronto police are asking for 25 more million in the next budget for salary increases to bring their budget to 1.1 billion of the city budget, and they're already, like, way inflated. Like, their budget is ridiculous. When the National Post goes after Ford, it's a big sign. Rebel News is against Ford. Wonder if they will get more influential. Rebel News. Rebel News, right? Like, it's like the Sun, you know? I'm just like, Yeah, having a job is weird because we're in the middle of a major extinction event. Yeah. Good point. Everybody, quick, go to those jobs you hate. Ignore the major extinction event. Don't worry about it. Oh yeah, dude. No, I'm with you when it comes to our conspiracy, dude. You could spend, like, tons of time in there, right? It's wild. Like, it's fucking wild. Like, our conspiracy used to be more sane. It used to be more sane. Like, but that's kind of what I like about it. I like that it's nuts. And they kind of know that it's nuts. You know what I mean? Like, for sure there are people in there who are, like, true believers, but I think most of the people in our conspiracy are like, we kind of know that this is not real. Like, we're just kind of here to just kind of enjoy what we're doing and be like, okay, everybody. Like, if you really want to go down speculative rabbit holes, our conspiracy is the place to do it. And as long as you know that's what you're doing, right? Like, as long as you don't buy in, you know? It's like reading a trashy fashion magazine, you know? Like, you kind of know you're wasting your time. You know that it's bullshit. You know that most of the stories are dumb. Like, when you're reading a Cosmo, you don't actually believe, like, 100 sex tricks to try with your man tonight. Like, you don't really believe these things, right? Like, nobody is reading these being like, oh yeah, I'm definitely gonna try that, right? Like, it's not real. But, like, it's still fun. Like, it's still fun to read a fucking Cosmo. Like, yes, I'm saying this out loud in front of you right now, everybody. If you gave me a Cosmo, I would read it and I would have a great time. I love it. I would never buy a Cosmo. I think that's the thing. Like, if I ended up with a Cosmo somehow, I would definitely love it. But I'm never going to, like, buy a Cosmo. You know what I mean? Yeah, that's how I feel about that. Can you imagine woke Twitter if Twitter were banned overnight? Yeah, I feel like there's actual revolutionary energy there that's just being drained constantly. Well, no, but that's the thing. Like, the woke Twitter is not revolutionary energy, right? It's just faffing, really. It's just like outrage culture, right? Which is essentially what people are talking about when they're talking about woke Twitter, right? Like, it's just a form of intellectual masturbation, really. Like, finding ways to, like, being outraged is a way to feel emotions. When you live in a culture that is not interested in you feeling emotions, that wants to kill emotions, that doesn't know how to deal with people feeling emotions, then you pursue the emotions that the culture allows you to pursue. And outrage has become an acceptable emotion. We accept, and in fact, like Facebook is a great example of this. Facebook, if you hit the angry face emoji on Facebook, they weight that 5 times stronger than any other emoji. That means on Facebook, if you hit the angry face, that is 5 times stronger than the heart. Hatred on Facebook is 5 times stronger than love. By design. By design. Which discredits the entire thing, if you ask me. Like, get off Facebook instantly. Like, anybody using Facebook, you're like, okay. I choose love. Like, sorry you're choosing hate, but I choose love, right? And people aren't actually interested in changing anything or doing anything or forming revolution or actually fomenting change. They're interested in entertaining themselves. And the woke Twitter, if you like, it's just a form of self-entertainment. It's just masturbatorial. Like, they're not being outraged because they want or expect change. They're just doing it because it's a way for them to feel something. And being outraged spreads around faster than anything else on these social media sites. So, like, if Twitter were banned overnight, like, all of that would just go somewhere else. They would just find a new way to be outraged about shit. Because it's not really that relevant. That's why, and that's yet another reason why I think Twitter is just kind of a big faff. Like, it's all just a bunch of people, like, kind of jerking off about how, oh, this is so outrageous. It's like, okay, but are you going to, like, go to the streets? Are you going to protest? Are you going to do anything about it? No. Okay. Glad people are talking about Malone and Jerry there, though. Did you hear about Flurona? What the fuck is Flurona, dude? Flurona. Oh, great. Oh, yeah. I knew this was going to happen for sure. Coronavirus and influenza co-infections reported as Omicron surges. Get the fuck out of here. Well, like, yeah, what happens if, like, Omicron or, like, COVID starts to merge with, like, some of the more serious shit? Like fucking Ebola or shit. Doctors have been long concerned about the potential impact of a twin-demic. I got the brain power to deal with that shit, dude. I do try those sex tests. Good for you, bud. Good for you. Isn't entertaining ourselves what we're doing here? No. Like, I mean, sure. But, like, I help organize protests. Like, I'm serious about this. Like, we need to take to the streets, surround the halls of power, right? I am here to report on the heroes, people like Jessica Resnick, who are fighting against the death cult as the heroes that they are. And I am here to galvanize others to do what must be done in order to fight against the death cult, which is surround the halls of power permanently. That's what we have to do. And, like, sure, entertaining ourselves, but, like, that's the end goal. That's the job. That's what we're doing. And the only thing that's really stopping this channel from being more impactful is that A, we're just starting, but B, we're very spread out. And so I say all the time, it's up to you. If you're in like Thunder Bay, right? You got to go and you got to find the movement. And if you can't find the movement, or if it doesn't exist, then you are the movement. You have to print the flyer. You have to pick the day. You got to put the flyer up. You got to go on the day. And when nobody comes, right, then you come in here. We cry about it together, because this is a solidarity movement. And then you pick another day, print another flyer, put it up, go again, and keep doing that. Just like I do. And we eventually have to find a penetration moment. It eventually needs to penetrate. Because the other choice is self-destruction. And like, we try to have fun here, right? We try, but ultimately it is a solidarity movement. Like, we're not bullshitting each other. Inaction is destruction. The comet's coming. You can see it. It's going to hit. And they're going to let it hit. They keep telling us that they're going to let it hit. Like, it's time to surround the halls of power. Twitter is a great organizing tool. It was utilized for getting people to encampments defense and a Black Lives Matter protest. Oh, yeah, okay. That's a pretty strong defense of Twitter, bud. I like it. That is exactly the kind of thing that an unimpressed cat would say. We're too passive for that shit. It's sad. Yeah. The passivity is pretty interesting. The gullibility is what gets me the most. Like, the passivity is one thing, because the passivity comes because people believe that the electoral system will actually result in a beneficial, somehow resolve itself beneficially, right? But it's the gullibility that gets me the most. Like, you can say anything you like to Canadians, anything you like, and they'll believe you, right? Like, maybe not every Canadian will believe you, but enough Canadians will believe you. We're an extremely gullible people. I really got to find a clip. There's a clip from the movie Galaxy Quest, right? If you've never seen the movie Galaxy Quest, there's this alien species that don't have or understand the concept of lying, right? So they mistake this television show, which is like a Star Trek style like television show called Galaxy Quest, that gets beamed into space. They mistake this television show for reality because they don't understand the concept of like telling false narratives, right? So they end up being just extremely gullible, and they believe anything you tell them. And I'm like, you watch this film and you're just like, yeah, those are Canadians. That's who they are. Yeah, plus the fan saves the day. Like, by the hammer of Grakthor, what a savings. Yeah. I was a campaign manager in the last election, and the passivity is really there. Yeah, because everybody thinks that, like, oh, I'll just show up on the day to vote, and I will. And it's like, oh, okay. Like, why do you think the politicians are constantly saying, like, just go vote? Right? Because they know that they've controlled the system. That the system is... and honestly, like, I do believe that most people really only want... Like, they want enough money to be able to get shelter and food and, like, a case of beer on the weekend. Like, really, that's all people... Like, a lot of people are looking for in their life. Like, they go to a job, and they work the job, and especially if the job is something useful. Like, if you're doing something that's actually, like, useful for the society, you can really believe that, like, okay, yeah, I wake up, I work hard, I do this kind of stuff, and I get enough to, like, have food, have shelter, and have some beer, right? And that's really all most people are looking for in their life, right? And if you have that in your life, then you can say stupid stuff and just believe it. Like, just get a job. Like, okay, bud, whatever you say, right? And if you respond with like, yeah, I have 3, like they don't know what to say. Like they don't know what to do, right? And it's not like we teach people stuff. It's not like we teach anybody about this. Because again, like we are extremely gullible as a culture. In my view, it's a major problem. Like it's a real major problem. And that gullibility, like, so what happens, right, is that once an institution proves that it's untrustworthy, like corporate media, for example, then people blow off of that, right? Like once it becomes so obvious that the most gullible people on the planet no longer trust the institution, they blow off of it. But where do they end up? They end up listening to frauds and charlatans and believing ridiculous shit that they see in like our conspiracy. Why? Because they're still gullible. Right? Like that's how shitty this capitalist system is that they can't even maintain the trust of the most gullible people that exist. Joe Rogan's an interesting case, man, because like he is like this odd amalgamation of just like a dude who was doing a podcast. Yeah, they end up at JRE. Yeah, well, and like he himself has fallen into like the trap of wealth, right? Because you can't avoid it. You can't avoid it. Like I have learned enough about what happens to a person when you accrue wealth. And you can see it happen with Joe Rogan. Like you can see the shift happen to him. It's observable as he gets like this obscene amount of wealth. The Spotify deal was a huge change for him, where he shifts from being like, oh yeah, life is like serendipitous and like there's odd things can happen and like all of this kind of stuff, into being just like, it's about hustle, it's about grind, right? It's about being your best self and all this kind of thing. You're just like, that like, and I've seen enough of that I've come to realize like, no, like I once I get enough money that I've got like my food and shelter taken care of, I'm just going to start giving money away, because it corrupts you on a deep level, on a deep subconscious level. Like we every time they run a study on the effects of accruing wealth, they get the same result, which is that the person loses the ability to have reason. Like, they'll sit people down at a game, and they'll literally, like, take a wad of money, like game money, and they'll give it to someone and be like, here you go, you start the game with this giant wad of money. And everybody else does not. Game starts, right? And what happens every single time? Well, this guy wins. And then what happens every single time? The person who wins the game tries to create alternative reasons. And those alternative reasons always sound like, well, I won because of my superior tactics and because of my superior intellect and my ability to see the system. And they don't say, yeah, I won because I started with a huge advantage, right? I just started with this wad of fucking cash, which, like, sure, like the intellect and all that kind of stuff and so on and so forth, but like it was all based on the idea that I had this resource that no one else had, right? Like it's easy to make good decisions when you have the resources to be able to back those decisions up. And that's the result every single time. So you lose the ability to think rationally. You lose the ability to have empathy or compassion. That's another thing that they see with the studies that they do. It's like once you are able to create the reality, once everyone you interact with is someone you buy somehow, you no longer live in reality, right? Like, and once you have created this false reality around yourself where you're just surrounded by people who only see you as like a wealth distributor. If you encounter someone who doesn't interact with you in that way, you can just discount them. Oh, they must have some kind of mental illness or something, right? Like, it can't possibly be the fact that they're your equal and they don't give a fuck about your money. Like, just give away your money? Well, you're assuming that capitalism is a rational system. Well, no, like, I'm assuming that the only way to avoid the wealth trap is to not have the wealth, right? And it is the only thing to do. It's the only thing to avoid. That you, like, if you want to keep your feet on the ground, if you want to live in the world instead of creating a false reality of your own delusional mind, right? You got to give your money away. You have to, right? You got to give your money to the poor. It's the only thing you can do. It's the only way to avoid it. More money for me just equals supporting more people I care about. Well, and I think about it that way too. Like, I don't, the hoarding is unbelievable to me. Like, I don't understand where that comes from. I don't understand the mindset of it. Like, how is Jeff Bezos not just walking down the street of every city, like, with like a big basket of money and just being like, here you go, and just giving out wads of thousands, like, just like, yeah, here you go. If I had like $100 billion, that's all I would do all day long. I would constantly do that. I'd be like, what a joy, what a treat, right? And then somebody comes along and steals your basket, and you just go, oh, okay, and you get another basket, like, and you just. I think it's just animal instinct, fear of death. Yeah, like, I mean, well, and a lot of it is you're tying your meaning into it, like that like the pile of money is somehow a measurement of your worth, right? Because he needs to fly to space in a giant penis. Plus, poverty literally makes you dumber. When all you can think about is your next meal, you slowly lose the ability to get away from that mentality. By dumber, I mean it forces you to think, I'm different, not in a different way, not inherently intellectually inferior. Well, I think what you mean is that, like, it not dumber, but more immediate. You think more immediately, right? Because things are more immediate when you're in poverty, right? Like, when you don't know where your next meal is going to come from, you think more immediately. Whereas if you've got, like, a ton of money, right? Like, you can think in this sort of big, grand, sweeping sort of way. You don't need to worry about the immediate, right? And the immediacy, when that fucking disappears, like, and you can start thinking about creating your own reality, right? Yeah, when he moved to Texas, all was lost. Yeah. Well, people have talked about that in regards to him. Like, in Los Angeles, he was still surrounded by, like, liberal lefty types, right? But now he's in Texas. It's all yeehaw and guns ablaze, right? And, like, Rogan keeps talking about how, like, he votes Democrat and he has, like, leftist ideas and all this kind of stuff. But, like, the dude is, like, a bro. Like, he's a bro. Let's be straight. Like, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not trying to say that he's a bad person because of that, but just, like, it's not that surprising that he's, like, losing the more, you know, leftist kind of communist ideas. 850 subs plus 6 in a few days, yeah. And, you know, and I don't know. It just happens that way sometimes. Thanks, Grinning. Thanks for noticing. Yeah, it's nice. It's nice. I'm trundling towards 1,000 subscribers. I'm trying. Honestly, I'm trying not to focus on it. That's really what it is. I'm just trying to focus on the work, trying to focus on who I am, trying to focus on what I'm doing, because I know myself, and I know that, like, the journey from 900 to 1,000 is going to be the hardest. It's going to be so fucking hard, and the urge to run away from it is going to be really big. It's gonna be really, really big. Like, just this, like, because my entire life is just a series of building, and just having some tsunami come through and wipe it out, right? Like, literally the year I graduate from arts school is the year where arts funding gets cut across Canada, in some places as deeply as 80%. Like, that's a huge kick in the ass. That's a huge kick in the ass. Every single time I've started to build, like, I go out east to become a beekeeper, and then I get completely fucked over, right? Like, the guy that I'm working with literally doesn't pay me. Like, oh, well, get fucked. I start working for a company, right? I start going up the corporate chain, getting into management, right? Getting my feet on the ground, actually building stuff, and you starting to get some money. Oh, get the fuck out, you're done. Right? Like, it's just over and over and over and over again. I'm used to it now. I expect things to fail. And so a major checkpoint for this channel is 1,000. It's a major checkpoint for me. And I know it. And I'm expecting it to fail. I have that expectation. And so the journey from 900 to 1,000 is going to be really hard for me. Like, the self-loathing and the depression and the anxiety and the fear and all of that is going to really, really bubble up to the surface. And I'm constantly going to find myself asking myself, why am I doing this? What is this for? How, like, I should just stop now before I get too invested and I feel, before I get too invested and then I get betrayed. But I know that what I'm doing supersedes that goal. Like, the 1,000 checkpoint doesn't actually matter. That I would be doing this anyway. Even if I had to grab a ham radio and start doing it that way. What are you guys talking about? The other problem with poverty is that it lowers the ability to provide good nutrition. Lack of nutrition does affect your brain health, yeah. If we eliminated poverty, nobody would join the military, yeah. Countries with more social cohesion than ours have compulsory military service. I mean, there's a difference. I don't know. There's a difference between, like, having a military and, like, what we're doing, right? We're like an aggressive invading force constantly. Anyway, guys, we have hit 9 o'clock. That is the end of this show. Another good episode. Thanks so much, guys, for being here. Please like, please share, please subscribe, please comment, do all the things, hit all the bells. Sharing it around is the way to make sure more people see it, right? YouTube doesn't share it, so make sure you do, right? My Patreon down below, please consider donating to the Patreon. If you're donating $1, maybe make it $2. If you're donating nothing, maybe make it $1. If only to make me feel good about myself. And hey, it's my birthday tomorrow. Come on. Always remember, guys, you are a quantum being living in quantum energy. These billionaires spend hundreds of billions of dollars to make sure that you don't actually realize it. Because if you do realize it, you might actually put together that you are just as valuable and valid as they are. And if you realize that, you're going to be a lot harder to enslave. Fuck them. Revolt. Rebel. Repent. Good luck. We're going to need it.